It'll be another thing.
Oh my God, there's another Davina here. Wow.
Isn't that crazy? And you're both lovely.
Hi. My name's Davina too.
Is your name Davina too?
Yes.
Awesome. So nice to meet you.
You too. And it's spelled exactly the same way.
What? I was gonna ask because some is either E or an I.
Nice to meet another Davina.
Nice to meet you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 7th Oakland Breastfeeding Festival. Hey, 7th annual. Woo-hoo-hoo. So happy to be with everybody. It's our lucky 7. Whoop, whoop, there's Laura. Hi, Laura. Down there, that's Laura Cox. She is really co-hosting with me. She is the co-mama. We made this baby together. She and I, we're the parents of the Oakland Breastfeeding Festival. So, say hi, Laura.
Hi, everybody. Whoop, whoop. It's such a pleasure and honor to be here with you and to be here again with the amazing Samsara. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. This is such a joy. And can you believe it? 7 years.
7 years.
You remember? I remember the first one. I cannot believe we're at 7 years. When I was doing the press release, I was like, holy cow, are we really at 7? It's a
lucky number 7.
It's a beautiful thing. It is a beautiful thing.
Truly is. Truly is. So I want to start with a grounding activity, with 2 beautiful grounding activities. We have our beautiful Estrella, who is a doula healer, needs to be a midwife person who I adore and love as a daughter. She will grace us with song. So please take it away.
Thank you. So I'm going to open up with a traditional libation that we do in the Yoruba tradition, just to bring in all of our energies, ancestor energy, that kind of things, good spirits. And so I'm going to do that in the Yoruba language, in my tradition of the Ifa. And so we begin with the water. Omi tutu, ana tutu, ile tutu, tutu babala, tutu ori, tutu emi, tutu aye, tutu laroye, kosiku, kosi rururu, kosi dina, kosi akoba fiti boari kuba wo, mojuba aluwa de aurona leda, elede mare, arisha bo, tajiba elede mare, mojuba eshu, mojuba osai, mojuba oku, mojuba ojo oni, mojuba batala, mojuba duduwa, mojuba rumila, mojuba ella, mojuba yamaya, mojuba agayu, mojuba kanra, mojuba ramfe, mojuba yakuta, mojuba oya, mojuba olokun, mojuba aje, mojuba oshun, mojuba egbe, mojuba bobo orisha, mojuba bobo orun, mojuba egungun kiki gungun, mojuba babala yala ara arun, etc. Ashe, ashe, ashe. And we all may say 3 times, ashe,
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 ashe.
ashe.
Thank you so much. The song I'm going to sing to you is also in Yoruba, and the meaning of the song is although we may suffer through, or we may push through the pangs of childbirth, our people, our race, our humanness will continue to live on. That is the meaning and the essence of this song. Bimo dura bimo lubeo, iremi kashaiba, bimo dura bimo lubeo, iremi kashaiba, bimo dura bimo lubeo, iremi kashaiba, bimo dura bimo lubeo, iremi kashaiba. Ashe, and thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Akila, our wonderful poetess, you are next.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning. Don't know where you guys are calling in or zooming in from. My name is Aquila Lewis Ross, and I'm really excited to be here. I'm a poet, a journalist, and an author. I'm going to share with you something I wrote about 2 years ago. I don't know why I haven't published it, but when I was looking for things to share today, poems to share today, this is something that came up. And I also took a class this summer called Writing Motherhood. And it was an awesome class, just talking about the origins of motherhood and the journey of motherhood, and just where I am at this point. And these writings are 2 years apart. This is called Honoring National Black Breastfeeding Week with Baby Love, my breast friend. Last month, in honor of National Black Breastfeeding Week, August 25th through 31st, I started writing about the highs and lows of my breastfeeding journey. At almost 2, she will be now 4 next month, September 13th, my daughter, whom I affectionately call Baby Love, still loves to receive milk from my breast, AKA titty. I didn't know she was actually listening to me when I would offer it to her when she was a newborn or infant. But recently, when we were in a meeting, she blurted out loud and strong in a song, titty. Instead of becoming annoyed, I kind of smirked because she did a little dance when she said it. I've been thinking about weaning her from breastfeeding, whenever that means. I've been told by dentists that her 4 front teeth isn't healthy and may have to be pulled, all because I didn't wipe them after breastfeeding at night. I also might have been late in introducing fluoride toothpaste. I really enjoyed breastfeeding my Baby Love. The benefits: major weight loss. I never really was ashamed of my body weight or type while pregnant after losing the baby weight or before pregnancy. I love my full figureness, and with some counseling, therapy from traumatic childhood, adult sexual and physical violence, I still love me and my fighter body spirit even more. Another benefit to choosing to breastfeed are bonding. But I remember the first 2 weeks, we both were very frustrated because she couldn't latch. I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to give her the best, most healthy, nutritious food source. Lactation specialists, doulas, and midwives tried helping with various positions like cradle, cross cradle, football, or recline. It was so much to learn as a new mother, and I felt lost. I was blessed to have trained, educated women available to help. But I also wished that my maternal and paternal mamas were present. I was too embarrassed or scared to ask for help. I remember how shocked my in-laws and family members were when I breastfed in front of them. I wouldn't say that they shamed me, but there were times when I would have rather breastfed in my room, the car, or bathroom because I wouldn't risk the looks or hearing uninteresting or unrelated stories. Although I received a lot of coaching and or mentoring from my doulas and midwives on breastfeeding, I wasn't prepared to not be fully supported for my choice to do so. I don't think anyone asked me why, but instead offered the reasons why they chose not to. I just listened, I guess. I chose to breastfeed my baby love because I wanted to. It seemed the best and most healthy, free thing to do. Plus, of all the stories that did not seem to stick out the most, my mom said when she tried to breastfeed, she was teased, discouraged, and bullied to not do so. I still hear the regret in her voice, but I sometimes wonder if she knows that her looks or comments make me want to shut down too. Although it is now against the law for mothers to be harassed for breastfeeding in public, and more spaces to breastfeed are available, employers, families, and various cultures still are uncomfortable and or have sexualized what is natural. It helps to have an outlet, hobby, or doula midwife or friend to help voice your concern or feelings of shame. What a beautiful world we would live in if we were just accepted for who we are, regardless of race, class, culture, sexual orientation, preference, body type, shape, style of dress, and whether we want to breastfeed our babies or not. I look forward to learning about and experiencing the beautiful twos my baby love, because everything about her is beautiful and she's not terrible. She's spicy, curious, adventurous, full of grace and beauty, a princess, a goddess, my legacy, my everything, my breast friend. The antidote, I am so fat. I don't mean that in a good way, even if fat activists have changed the narrative. To me, it's a double negative, especially when my body screams every day for relief. I can't say I love all this fat lusciousness when I should. I went to the wrong doctor who refused to heal me. Instead, in very few words, but I understood their meaning. Girl, you're fat, is what I heard when they said morbidly obese, with a referral to a nutrition weight management class. Yeah, I'm fat and need to lose weight, but I'm not a fan of this kind of change because dieting is gross. Each scale report is an annoying reminder of failure, a false sense of balance. Here I am stuck at a crossroads. I struggle with bouts of depression and chronic fatigue that linger undiagnosed. Stretch marks were there before a seed was planted in my womb, but now they are much darker. Rows have multiplied. Hips and booty have grown wider. Hottentot Venus, like Sarah's disgrace, I've fallen from grace. I never could quite figure out how to fulfill my dreams without tripping over a traumatic memory. Not sure who penned the phrase, God won't put more on you than you can bear. Sounds like missionaries deceiving natives again, secretly stealing land and adopting cultural appropriation. Slave masters driving Black bodies until they are worn out. I don't know how to write a love letter to my body. My body has never really been known love. Instead, I point fingers at all the things where motherhood hasn't changed me. And gratitude to ancestral medicine, life's blessing juice can heal us. Ancestors passed through breast milk with the formula to carry on. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, so beautiful. So beautiful. Thank you, Akua. And now I have to continue on after all that beauty. My goodness. Oh, so the space has been cleared and ancestors called, and we get to celebrate this wonderful gift we have to be able to feed our babies with our bodies, with our breasts, with our hearts, our minds, our souls. To be able to share that ancestral wisdom with our offspring is truly, truly a gift. And we also want to open up the space for folks, all the ways that people are feeding their babies human milk. You know, Laura, you want to say a couple words about that? Just all the ways people are giving milk to their offspring?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not just a breastfeeding activity. This can be chest feeding. It can just be lactation. It can be through a cup. It can be through finger feeding. It can be through spoons that are ways. It could be human milk in combination with other donated milk. It could be with artificial milk. There are lots of different ways in which we can do this and still support our lactating community members.
Absolutely. 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 So, oh, I didn't introduce myself, did I? I'm Samsara Morgan. I'm the executive director and founder of the Oakland Better Birth Foundation. This lovely event came out of my work with Laura Cox. I believe I received an invitation from her years ago now. She only had one little child at the time, to come to what was called the Big Latch On. The Big Latch On was going on. That was a national event. It was going on all over the place. And unfortunately, that group kind of got co-opted by a lot of corporate interests, and a lot of people were not happy about that and pulled away from the Big Latch On. So we have big corporations coming in and giving their breast milk supplies and all of that stuff and money, unfortunately, which is truly the root of things that are not nice often. And I remember Laura and I got to kibitzing about that and how we both weren't happy about that. And we devised our own beautiful little event that would go on in Oakland, and a part of this great country that really has very low numbers of babies receiving human milk. It's a particular heartbreak to both Laura and myself. And we started out over on Lake Merritt for several years, and our event was growing and growing. And we had lovely parents and beautiful speakers, as you will see today. And at some point today, we will have the latch on, and the latch on is 1 minute. Those of us who are lactating, sadly not me, I'm in support though. The folks who are lactating will feed their young ones for a minute in solidarity with all of the lactating parents, breastfeeding parents all over the world. We want to definitely give particular love to the parents in Haiti. We want to give love to the parents in Afghanistan. We want to give love to the parents everywhere in the world where greed and foolishness and corporate evil is torturing them and their offspring. We pray that those babies could find their mother's bodies and be comforted. We want to send the safety to them and nurturing to them. And I regret that my tax dollars have any part in their suffering whatsoever. So I think I said to Laura, you want to introduce yourself? Who are you? What are you doing?
That's a great question, right? I think I ask myself that question every day when I wake up. Laura Cox. I am actually a lactation educator and counselor and have been now for, around 10 years. I teach lactation for the student nurses over at St. Merritt University, as well as UCSF's MEPID program. And I also teach for the med students over here at Touro University in the beautiful city of Vallejo, for which I live. And I also teach doulas. I teach doulas through the amazing Samsara Morgan, as well as through Cornerstone doula trainings, which is definitely a blessing. I recently got my my nursing license through UCSF. I am a MEPIN 2019-2020 MEPIN. Thank you so much. Thank you. Nursing school during a pandemic is real, y'all. I am continuing on with my master's degree at UCSF in health policy. I also am a registered nurse working with Lifelong. I work for the community clinics here. I'm an OBGYN nurse and also provide lactation support to our clinic participants. So yeah, doing all things. It's a pleasure to be here with y'all today.
It really is. And for quite a few years, Laura was definitely our lactation guruess I ran a program for Alameda County serving mamas aging out of the foster care system. And so there's a whole cadre of lovely young mamas out there in Oakland who remember fondly Laura's name and to send me texts every once in a while asking how she's doing, which is a tremendous, tremendous compliment to Laura, for definitely. It makes me feel really good too that those mamas who, well, pretty much the mamas in that group breastfed for a good long time, way above the national averages, and are doing super well in the world for the vast majority. So I want to add that in too, because Laura is an actual ally who puts her words and her actions match. So we want to thank that and call that out when that happens in the wide world of sports. So we're going to get into our program now. More folks will be joining us, but I'm going to start with our amazing doula, Jessie Ray, who's going to talk to us about fathers and male-identified people and this breastfeeding thing. Feel free to clarify better than I just did and introduce yourself fully.
Thank you. Thank you for having me speak today. I'm really happy to be here. I want to first give honor to our ancestors, to the healers and granny midwives. We thank you for paving the way and laying the foundation for this work that we do. Mamisi Samsara, I want to thank you and Laura for putting this together. Laura, on the sidebar, I didn't know you work at Lifelong. I do work at the Satellite Partnership Clinic at the Glenberg Wellness Clinic, so we definitely need to talk in depth more about that. But thank you to the Oakland Better Birth Foundation and my Schiffer Circle family for hosting this virtual Latch On and festival today. And lastly, I want to give honor to National Breastfeeding Month, Native Breastfeeding Week, and Black Breastfeeding Week, all of which we just recently celebrated during the month of August, and all of our lactating families and families who have pushed the conversation around lactation. Thank you all. So when it comes to lactation and partnership, teamwork makes the dream work, especially when it comes to feeding and lactation. So we should be normalizing these conversations around breast, around chest, and around lactation. So thank you to all for being a part of this conversation. This is and should be a family affair. So when it comes to lactation, all hands should be on deck. Rest and relaxation should be at the top of the priority list for birthing persons. So trips to Target, cooking, stuff like cleaning, those should all be taken care of by other members of the household and or supportive people to the birthing person. For partners, they should, it's encouraged to find ways to make feeding time mutually inclusive. Massage your partner's feet, draw a warm bath to have ready after feeding time. Maybe a bath for one could turn into a bath for two, if you know what I mean. In all seriousness, massages, tea, support pillows, any other little thing that you think will help can be a big help, Develop a plan within your birthing plan that speaks specifically to your lactation goals. If you're a partner, I encourage that you personally deliver your birth plan to the hospital team to let them know that it's not just your partner that's involved, but you as well, and you're a team together putting this plan out there, and be ready to protect and defend any of those decisions that you make, because there's going to be people coming in from every which way with every which opinion about what you should and shouldn't be doing. But if you and your partner have talked about this beforehand and are prepared for this, then you can easily swat the flies, as I say. And again, just be ready to protect and defend your decision, whatever that is. Most importantly, be ready to protect each other. Encouragement is encouraged, lots of it. You should be a pillar of strength. Be a pillar of strength for each other.
Sorry. I think we're good now.
Okay, sorry.
No,
Be a pillar of strength for each other because, excuse my language, this shit is tough. Allow support to come to you as well as a partner, because allow yourself some grace, because this is your process too. And yeah, I stress that to the depths for partner support. I didn't really introduce myself, but one of the reasons why I got involved in birth and created the Doodad which is my platform, my doula platform, is to encourage masculine identified persons to be a part of the birthing process. And a lot of the work that I was doing with my mother, I would see single moms or the partner role just kind of be forgotten about. And so I wanted to give a voice and a platform for those out there who are involved in birth, who identify as masculine identified individuals. So yeah, that's just a little bit about me and my thoughts around partner support. Yeah, that's kind of it.
sounds good.
Thank
Does
you.
anybody have any questions for Jessie? I don't see anything coming up on the chat, so that's good. You were so succinct that there are no questions. So
Thank you.
there is the Doodad. I definitely recommend everybody going into Instagram and liking and seeing all the wonderful videos. I'm in a couple of them, very proud of that. And it's really, I'm so grateful for Jessie's work in bringing in the voice of fathers and identified folks and community in supporting pregnant and lactating folk. So thanks again. And next we have Jesselyn. Are you ready?
Hi. Thank you. Before I introduce myself, how long should I take?
How long do you want?
Okay. Well, hello everyone. My name is Jesselyn Ballerano, and I've had the honor of assisting Samsara at births and assisting our programming at Oakland Better Birth and Schiffer's Circle. But I am in Eugene, Oregon, so it's lovely to see all your faces. If I could hug you, I would. And I love our picnics, but this is wonderful because we get to really hear up close so many wonderful perspectives and voices and shares and hearts. And thank you for the music. Thank you for the poetry. Thank you for the prayers. I am on Kalapuya land, that is known as Eugene, Oregon. But I spent the last couple years on the live version of this event. So just very grateful and happy to be here. I'm sharing a few pieces on oxytocin today, which is something Samsara asked me to do because I've, in our programming and in our classes, we've done some information and classes on oxytocin in birth and pregnancy and labor. And I'm starting to learn about that in breastfeeding as well, thanks in large part to Laura Cox, but also because as I continue to dive into understanding this, and I'm not an endocrinologist, I'm a doula and a childbirth educator, but I really love learning about this hormone and neurotransmitter because it illuminates so much of what we want to protect with events like this and the learning in our program and the direct services that our doulas provide, which is safe and trusting and joyful connection for healthy families in the empowerment and trust in their bodies that they get to reclaim when they learn all the amazing things we can do in creating and nourishing our families. So I'm going to share my screen a little bit because slides help me. I'll try to pop on and off. I don't have like a ton. These are sporadic, but we'll go as long as it feels good. And I'll try not to take up too much time because those of you who know me know I can go off on my tangents. Could I possibly share my screen? Is that okay?
Yes, let me give you that. Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Just want to say, hey, I'm so happy to be here. Again, I consider this an annual picnic, but happy to be here online as well.
Definitely.
A lot of you might have heard of oxytocin before. It has a major role in these big concepts that include a lot of different behaviors. These are just some of them: birth, attachment, all different kinds of bonding, skin to skin and bodily feeding, different kinds of intimacy. And they're really tied to all these different ways that we nurture life in the biological and in the social sense for mammals and for humans. And I've actually been really rethinking this just image in my mind. The more and more I learn about oxytocin and even the way it interacts in the breast and in the brain and in the uterus, I think about the squeezing hormone. So hugs, the contractions of the uterus, the squeezing of the alveoli, the milk ducts that express milk. So some of the verbs I've been thinking about are squeezing, safe, trusted squeezing, pulsing, connecting, yolking. It's a very connective chemical. And as a hormone, it acts on different parts of our body. And as a neurotransmitter, it acts in our brain, creating experiences of these things. So bonding, connectedness, trust, familiarity. We'll jump more into it. And this is one of the first encounters with oxytocin I ever had, which was as an undergraduate college student. I was in a sociology class learning about bonding and social networks. And I learned about this feedback loop that you may have seen in different kinds of lactation education, how the connection of the skin to skin and the closeness and the eye contact between the lactating parent and the infant creates a positive feedback loop that stimulates in the brain more oxytocin. It also stimulates prolactin, which has to do with milk production. And oxytocin in particular has to do with milk ejection, which I'll get into in a second. So this was one of the very first things that I ever saw about oxytocin. And it really, I think, actually captures so many of these concepts about how positive bodily or social experiences create feedback loops for those experiences to continue unfolding. I also think this was a reminder for me, and is also a reminder when we're thinking about the past, the present, and the future of humanity as a species, is how we've evolved. We've evolved with this closeness tied right up into our physiology. Close contact with caregivers, close contact with lactating parents. So nurture is really a part of how we've evolved as humans. We understand, and a lot of us have, experienced the lack of our inherent social nature as humans. But our primate ancestors, and of course us, are social. What that means continues to change, but it's a big part of our physiology. And I think this new concept, this idea I learned from a Nurturely training. I'm a milk magic educator through an organization called Nurturely. Was this wonderful idea of why might breastfeeding be challenging sometimes? And if you think about the social legacy we have as humans, survival of the fittest, which is often translated to mean like the fastest or the biggest muscles, which is important in some settings in our heritage. But this ability to learn and nurture and be social in how we raise our young, how we collaborate in community, how we feed our entire community, these processes are also a part of that evolutionary fitness. And so this idea can apply to breastfeeding in the sense that a unit, a parent-child unit that doesn't have social support, if you think about it in the big evolutionary sense, they might not be having other things that are going to allow them to continue thriving in life. And we see that. We see postpartum mood disorders, we see physical complications, we see challenges with breastfeeding in families that don't have support. So education, modeling from elders, modeling from peers, just having empathy and connection with people and starting with where they're at and hearing where they're at so that they can be open and receptive to learning. This is a part of that collaborative learning. And that's all tied to oxytocin bonds and how the physiology really reflects this bigger need for us to be connected to one another to thrive, which is part of what drives, I think, all of our work in this foundation and certainly in my birth work. And this is just another image representing that feedback loop with the physiological detail. This is an artist named Alex Gray. I do want to zoom in on the milk ejection reflex because we are celebrating lactation here today, and then we'll zoom out a little bit more and I'll wrap up. So milk ejection is describing a mechanism that happens in birth related to in breastfeeding related to oxytocin, and it's mostly from intense suckling and skin to skin. So the suckling that a baby does in a lactation feeding session is going to stimulate oxytocin that comes in pulses. And when it's just suckling, the oxytocin seems to come kind of steadily based on this research on the early days right after birth in about 90-second pulses. So oxytocin is coming at this 1.5 minute pulse, which is actually kind of slow. I'm going a lot faster with my hands right now than that is. When you combine that with skin to skin, the frequency and the duration and the continued pulsing of that oxytocin increases. So breastfeeding is an activity that combines the suckling and the touch to really optimize that oxytocin flow during that activity. And then that suckling also is going to release some of that prolactin, more and more prolactin with a longer duration of suckling. And that is also boosted by oxytocin. And so in harmony, those two hormones work together to increase milk production. And Laura Cox can correct me if I'm not saying this right. As the oxytocin builds in the breast tissue, in the mammary glands, those special cells called epithelial cells around the alveoli or the sac of milk, those are what squeeze. That's that squeezing. Also, what causes squeezing and contraction in uterus is oxytocin. In this case, it's squeezing and contracting those alveolar sacs in the tissue. And that squeezes and releases the milk, and then that's the letdown reflex. So that's the milk ejection and the role of oxytocin in that. Again, skin to skin is a big piece of oxytocin stimulation and that feedback. So the skin to skin before and after a feeding is really beneficial. There's a lot more reasons than I fit on this slide because I don't want to take an hour, but the warmth of just holding your baby close, it's going to expand the blood vessels of the parent and the baby too, allowing blood to flow. It's also going to soften and relax those tissues around the milk itself and also around all that infrastructure of those delivery systems of the milk. So those tissues are softer and relaxer. That allows letdown to happen more easily. That warmth is also going to reduce clogging, because if you've ever had a clogged duct, or if you've ever been in the kitchen working with cold fat versus warm fat, the warmer we are in the environment where a fat is being processed or used or delivered through the body, the softer that fat's going to be as well. So it reduces clogging. It also lowers the tone of the stress response. And I read this morning, and I really love this phrase, the tone of the stress response, because I think that's such a nice way to describe this overall reduction of that stimulation of the stress and maybe fight flight response, you might think of it as. So like cortisol, adrenaline, the tone of the stress response comes down. So less inflammation, again, that softer, more relaxed state. The warmth also helps open up the sense of the body. So those pheromones are released that are going to attract the baby to the breast and have some of that seeking behavior for latching on. It's also going to lower stress for parent and baby, which is wonderful. We all could use that sometimes. So that's lowering blood pressure. It can also actually decrease anxiety and fear. So for lactating parents who are feeling stressed, because sometimes delivering milk to your child feels like if it doesn't happen in the next 30 seconds, you're going to give up and you feel like a failure. This is a common feeling people have. If we do skin to skin for 10 to 20 minutes before a lactating session, not only do we get these physical benefits to make that session perhaps easier or make ourselves or our baby's bodies more receptive to the exchange, but we can also bring down some of that anxiety and some of that fear. It also lowers our experience of pain. And we see this most impacting, perinatal experiences, maybe in labor, but there can be some sensitivity. And of course, a lot of people who struggle with breastfeeding are struggling with pain. We don't want pain to sustain or stay. We want to make sure someone is supported in finding a latch that is not ongoingly painful for them. But in the beginning, if there's just a little bit of discomfort or tenderness from normal hyperstimulation of these nipples, that can help mitigate some of that, the skin to skin beforehand and afterwards as well. I'll pause there because I just gave a lot of information and I'm going to do a few more things, but I just want to give it space in case anyone has anything they feel inspired to ask or share.
Anybody have any questions? You can speak them out loud or you can put them in the chat either way. Great job, Jessalyn.
Thank you. Laura, thank you.
Jessalyn,
Okay.
this presentation, this keeps getting better and better. I'm telling you.
Thank you so much.
So good.
Well, I'm feeling it. Let's jump in and finish up, and then if there's any questions at the end, I will.
Yes, girl, it's powerful. It's powerful. Keep going.
Thank you. Thank you. So just wrapping up all the things I said well, I'm never going to wrap up. I'm always going to be studying this, right? But as I'm learning, so like, this is really like baby's best place to be, even for parents who are using an aid or who are using bottles to deliver human milk or something else that they may need to use to nourish their child. Getting that skin to skin, being at the body is delivering all these incredible benefits. And suckling and skin to skin actually deliver a huge amount of the same benefits. Suckling just also stimulates the functions of the lactation. But if you're not able to do that part or not doing that part at this time, you can still create this environment to stimulate all these benefits of oxytocin for your little one. So that time spent skin to skin is going to be the eye contact, smelling mom's milk, smelling mom's pheromones, even if they're not drinking milk. If they are feeding, they're going to taste that milk. And even a warm mouth and a warm belly stimulates oxytocin. So you've got the trusted touch, the skin to skin, the warmth on their back, they are held as well. So again, even if someone's using a bottle, the skin to skin and the hand on the back, all creating that sensory central nervous system stimulation of the oxytocin and the calm and healing and relaxation response. Even hearing the voice, because familiarity, trusted voices can be a powerful toner for the central nervous system. This is also by a lactation professional at Kappa, so I just want to give credit where it's due. You can see Hope Parrish's name here. So oxytocin is for everybody, and we want our baby to receive these benefits, not just because it helps us get to the end of the feeding session and get the calories and the nutrients and the enzymes and the microbiome into that baby's belly, but also because all these other things that are going to be building and developing with oxytocin that are a part of every human body. So every mammal, there might be some exceptions, but as far as I know, all mammals, regardless of biological sex, run oxytocin. You can be a child, an adult, or an elder, so you're not limited by age or reproductive status. You can be neurodivergent. There's some really great research that some short-term exposure to synthetic oxytocin, which has got lots of different potential uses, and I know there's some challenges in labor, but what they have found for some adult male studies who had autism was that some light exposure to nasal oxytocin increased their ability to interact with people's facial interactions and emotions for like 6 weeks afterwards. So it's thought that maybe some neurodivergent people might have a different load or different ways to stimulate oxytocin, but we can still help their bodies to run this socially bonding hormone. It's cultivated in family units and small and large ones, also other mammals, so you can cuddle with your puppy. It also stimulates the protection aspect of nurturing, so nourishment, teaching, but also, and like giving them modeling, but also the protective aspect. So like that mama bear feeling, which I'm sure some people have had while lactating, right? Like if you're feeding and you have to do that in public and someone says something to you or leers at you, like that brings up like a really strong impulse to like fight, flight, cry, stop, breath. Like it's not a great feeling because it's a powerful protective instinct. And I just want to honor that that's a really normal part of your physiology if you've experienced that, and just honor that that's a powerful instinct and it's designed to help you protect your vulnerable little person who's feeding on you. So just want to normalize some of those mama bear feelings. We also see that oxytocin peaks at certain points of puberty, especially for people assigned female at birth, at the beginning of menstruation, and then fertility and sexual arousal, pregnancy, and for all these other processes that adults might go through. That's when we see oxytocin build in the body. And it serves so many purposes. These are like really broad categories of all these benefits and ways that oxytocin functions in us. So giving our baby these experiences through our chest feeding is an incredible foundation for what it means to be human and means to be a global citizen, because we have reproduction, we have mind-body sensitivity. Okay, that's great. We also have recognition and bonding and familiarity, calm, and trust. On the more physiological level, there's that pain reduction and stress reduction I mentioned, lowering the blood pressure, lowering the pulse, the stimulation of growth and healing. So like literally regenerative cells, the growth of the body needs to be in this resting, connected state for that to happen. We talked about decreasing fear, social interaction, even just working together as a group, collaborating on a project, laughing, sharing a story or a joke. These are aspects of the oxytocin exchange and cognitive experience. And then we also have impacts on digestion and metabolism, reduced risks of heart disease and arthritis. And I'm starting to learn more about how it's related to the vagal nerve. And we can probably go into a lot more about aspects of sexual health and pleasure and even creativity. So it's a powerful part of our physiology and our endocrine system that we get to start cultivating even before birth, but especially in this early newborn months of feeding. And we want to do this because the way that we kind of imprint the brain and the body in these early months it doesn't necessarily determine someone's fate or what kind of person they'll be, but it does shape our messaging to them about what kind of world they're in and what kind of world they're interacting with. And that can then engage different aspects of their brain. So the amygdala is part of the very ancient part of our brain, again, including that stress response, but also this rest and digest oxytocin response. And in the right amygdala, we might, if we were experiencing certain sensations, if you were to look at a brain scan, you'd see calmness in the right amygdala, contentedness, empathy, relaxation, and compassion, including the ability to see someone you love and recognize, oh, these are my kin, these are my people, these are the people who are dear to me. And of course, we want ourselves to feel that towards our neighbors and ourselves and be compassionate and kind, even if we're not best friends with everyone. We can't always do that. We don't necessarily want to always think every single human being is a safe person. And this is true that, oxytocin bonding and the effects of this hormone can create really, I would say, confusing experiences for victims of manipulation and abuse, because they might feel bonded to someone who is very close to their environment and has maybe stimulated oxytocin in some of these broad ways that we can do so, but that doesn't mean that person is a healthy, safe person for them. So when we think about seduction, when we think about even business dinners, warm foods, drinks, eye contact, these things can be done for all kinds of purposes, right? So, but this is the function of what it creates in the brain and in the body. The left amygdala is where these kinds of emotions of violence and aggression, hatred, and fear are felt. And that's in the left brain. And when we think about overall biology and stress response, when an infant is separated from its baby, that's considered a negative or toxic event in that way of the neurodevelopment. And so it stimulates these different aspects of pathways in the left amygdala. But when we stimulate the skin-to-skin system, when we stimulate oxytocin, when we bring down that stress response, when we basically bring in the other side of our central nervous system, so there's the stress response, and then there's this oxytocin array that I'm describing, we're actually able to stimulate that right amygdala and those more connected, compassionate, calm, empathetic networks in our brain. I don't want to say all stress is bad. There's stress and there's distress. So in birth, you can also talk about this in breastfeeding, but in birth you have some use for these hormones on the right here under the sympathetic nervous system, such as cortisol and adrenaline. That pushing period is known to have a peak of adrenaline. You need some cortisol because we're running lots of blood flow through our muscles and everything is engorged and working hard. But we also really want the right balance, and we do need these other hormones on the left in the parasympathetic system to be acting. And that oxytocin is what we've been talking about. Endorphins are pain mitigating, feel good hormones. We've talked about prolactin, and of course, estrogens has a huge role in reproduction. So we're just talking about balance here. We're not saying that all stress must be avoided at all times and that there's no challenges ever, and that what actually we wouldn't grow and we wouldn't respond the way that we do in these complex human developed ways if we didn't have any of this. So we need the balance, but the balance relies heavily on oxytocin. And some of the ways to deal with those challenges are thinking about, I just really took this idea about neuromodulation with oxytocin in birth and applying it to breastfeeding. So in birth, you have these contractions. In between the contractions, there are pauses. And the pauses is where the brain makes sense of this wild, intense experience that's happening. And the way the brain makes sense of it is it pivots towards nurturing. Oh, the baby is coming. I am now going to be the baby caregiver. So that neuromodulation happens when we aren't so much in our high pressure, analytical, got to watch the clock brain for labor. Similarly, we can look at lactation and think about this neuromodulation for breastfeeding. So if we are having stress responses or anxieties, which are totally valid to have when breastfeeding is challenging, right? But if we're having that, we want to be able to respond in a way that resets our nervous system and brings us back to our focus and our connection. And some of the ways to do that are to move away from the analytical brain. So reducing stressors, turning the clock to face the wall, maybe turning off the TV, taking some deep breaths. I love this, just like limiting protocol. We've seen a lot of people who have, maybe were given advice to immediately start scheduled feeding at the beginning of life, and they pivoted to feeding on demand because the schedule was so stressful and so unsupportive of their ability to figure out this process. So just taking some of those distractions away, which can happen in a lot of ways depending on the environment, and not expecting to track and monitor and count every ounce of milk and every length of every feeding, and then moving someone into their creative brain, or just their open receptive brain on the right side, that right amygdala space, but also in the rest of the brain, allowing more for feeling and sensing and touching, as opposed to analyzing and verbalizing, which you can imagine will be hard for me when I'm breastfeeding, right? Just going into that space of possibility, establishing and affirming safety, freedom. So maybe me as the lactating parent, I'm not talking, but my support person is saying, that's so good. And you're safe. I closed the door. No one's coming in. We have as much time as you need. We're here just to do this thing for as long as you want to do it. Just taking away those pressures, making safety. Moving intuitively. So maybe my breastfeeding position doesn't look like a perfect Princeton football hold. Maybe it's a little to the side, or maybe I need a fourth pillow, but it's going to work for me, right? And just allowing those natural responses to come in, taking breaths to allow those waves and those pulses between let down and feeding and the break and the burping. Giving our body the tools to have these responses. So, of course, also staying hydrated and things like that. And then just enjoying it when we can, even if it's just a small win after a difficult, challenging session. Maybe the latch happens in the last 30 minutes, but then that person actually does have to go because they do have to return to work or to what they were doing. And they're going to have to try again in 20 minutes, but smiling because they got that latch after those first 20 minutes of trying. And at the end of this, I guess I'll just say, sorry, it's kind of a sporadic ending, but with these processes, we are reclaiming our trust and our power in our own biochemistry and in our own bodily capacities as a people. And that's a universal goal and celebration to be proud of. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Jessalyn. I want to echo Jessie. Like every time this just gets deeper and deeper, I'll be very happy to write the foreword for your book when you're ready.
Thank you so much. I've been thinking about it. I have to say, Samsara asked me on Thursday or Friday, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to pull all my favorite pieces together. Thank you for having me.
And you're ready to do that on such short notice. Again, more hearts and applause.
Well, yeah, we can pull it together, but I've learned from you and Laura so much about this, so thank you.
You did so great. I'm so proud of you. So we're going to take a 5-minute little break. We're an hour in. We want to just practice good self-care so folks can stretch and go to the potty, do all those things, or breastfeed any youth that are hanging around with little people who might want to be fed or whatever, because we're busy people. So we're going to do a 5-minute little break and we'll be back. And our next speaker will be Dr. Rochelle Johnson. Yay, hi Rochelle. Okay, 5 minutes. Siri. Alarm in 4 minutes.
One sec.
Okay, folks, are we all back? Looks like it, looks like it. So, what's it mean? So without further ado, I am going to introduce my lovely friend who will then introduce herself further. Like your hair, sweetie. Thank you. This is our wonderful naturopathic doctor, Dr. Rochelle Johnson. I would like you to introduce yourself further. Let us know what the hell is a naturopathic doctor? And then whatever else you want to talk about, okay?
Awesome. Thank you, Samsara. Yes, I am so happy to be here. And I think this is my first time actually like talking with the breastfeeding aspect of what you do. So
Yeah.
I'm excited because I got to break out some old school books and, some of my notes from my current clients. So I'm like, yay. But yeah, I am a naturopathic doctor. I am in Richmond, California. And a naturopathic doctor is one who focuses on the healing power of nature, the healing power of the body. And, we believe that the body can rebalance itself. And, there's a time and there's a place for us to use Western medicine and pharmaceuticals as well. So we always go towards, the healing properties of what we can do on a daily basis so that we can actually affect lifestyle change. And, that goes more into prevention medicine. So when we're talking about things like breastfeeding and pregnancy and all of that, then we're going into the very basics of food as medicine, some different herbs as medicine, and other things you can do as well to help with either egg quality, sperm quality, embryo quality, and then breastfeeding as well. So, yeah, I think that's a good summary. Oh, and some people always like to know too, they're like, well, what was your background? My background is actually in chemistry and biochemistry. And I did cancer research for 6 years before going into naturopathic medicine. So I'm a nerd as well. So when Jessalyn was talking about oxytocin, I was just like, yay, someone else is doing the chemistry aspect. So, yeah. So yeah, I think this presentation, which I actually pulled together kind of last minute as well, but I think it ties in well with everything that she just presented. So it's kind of like divine presentation. So
Yeah, I love that.
yeah. So I'm going to go in and start sharing my screen. All right, and so you guys should be able to see that. So I just titled it Holistic Breastfeeding, which it's kind of like natural anyway. So, I decided to put the holistic aspect to it, but it's things that we already know. And one thing that I love that Jessalyn was saying was, intuitive breastfeeding. And, that's a lot of kind of what I do is I'm helping people realize what their body is telling them. Sometimes when I'm doing things here in office, whether it's cupping or IV therapy or putting together herbal blends, it's more of an intuitive nature going along with the science behind things. So I'm listening to your body, and I hope that this will also help people to listen to their bodies as well. One thing that I always talk about in the beginning is that, I have to put up my disclaimer. We're just talking about a discussion here. It's not meant for medical advice. And of course, you can always get the advice from a professional medical person like myself as well, but we're not diagnosing or treating per se. So I'm going to give some recommendations or thoughts around different herbs and foods and things like that, but it's not necessarily a medical treatment. And when Samsara was asking me about presenting, I was just trying to think of like some of the basic things that I've gone over with some of my clients. And so I'm sure that Jesselyn already spoke about the importance of breastfeeding, so I'm going to go over that a little bit more too. That's the scientific mind in me. And then also preparing to breastfeed. So things you can do when you are actually pregnant to help with lactation once your baby is here. And then we're going to talk a little bit about breastfeeding advice once baby is here, things that you can do to just improve your milk output as well. And then, as we were just talking about, the importance of stress reduction too. So perfect merging, as I said before. So these are some of the reasons why it's so important to for a mother to breastfeed. And, you know, I even go back with my own personal health. And I remember asking my mom, well, did you breastfeed me? And she was like, girl, no, like I had to work. And so, you know, that wasn't something that was big on her list, even though she was very familiar with it. But it was trying to, you know, raise 2 kids and go to work and maintain a job at the same time. So she actually didn't breastfeed. And then sometimes I wonder, you know, well, what are some of the health risk and or benefits that you might have from breastfeeding? So for the mom, when a mom breastfeeds, she's actually encouraging her uterus to contract, and that's going to prevent postpartum hemorrhage. So that's, you know, can be a big concern, especially in the minority community, where after labor and delivery, you continue to hemorrhage and continue to bleed. And so anything that we can do to start contracting the uterus and helping it to kind of like contract and get that muscle back to being the way it was, we should do. So that's why they're really emphasizing starting to latch and breastfeed very soon after you have labor and delivery. Also, breastfeeding will help with delaying ovulation and a menstrual cycle by at least 6 months or so. So the longer that one will typically breastfeed, then the longer that it's going to delay you having your next menstrual cycle. Some people actually use this as a method of birth control. And then others just use it as, you know, they're knowledgeable of the fact that their menstrual cycle is not going to be starting. And if they were having heavy menstrual cycles before or irregular menstrual cycles before, then they already know that things are going to be delayed with that. So they have a little bit more time to actually work on what was causing those heavy menstrual cycles as well. A third thing is that for the mom, it can actually help her return to her pre-pregnancy weight. And I've seen women that will actually lose more weight and be a healthier weight after they have their pregnancy than before. And it's because they were breastfeeding. So they were breastfeeding like nonstop. So just remember, it's really good for metabolism. And so it's going to support you in losing that excess pregnancy weight. A fourth thing is going to be about the bone health. So we know that when a woman is pregnant, everything is for 2 people, right? So sometimes she can lose a lot of calcium, she can lose vitamin D. So that's why we emphasize eating foods with that. And, you know, for some people supplementing, but when you're breastfeeding, that actually is going to help improve your bone health after you've been breastfeeding. So, you know, we think about the effect of estrogen on the bones and the hormones on the bones. All of what breastfeeding is doing is it's helping to rebalance those hormones, and it's helping you to rebalance how you are absorbing your calcium into your bones and your vitamin D levels as well. So it can actually improve your bone health. And that's another reason why I also talk about exercise as well. And then the last thing is going to be, it will actually lower a mother's risk of developing breast and ovarian cancer. So this is tying into the hormonal component, how your body is naturally starting to rebalance those hormones, but breastfeeding is helping with that. We know that we have hormone receptors in the breast as well as in the ovaries and the uterus. So, you know, when we're breastfeeding, we're going to end up lowering our risk of developing those types of cancers as well. So those are all the benefits when it comes to the mom breastfeeding. And then when it comes to the baby, these are a lot of the things that I work with people with. And we typically wouldn't think about it. It's just kind of like, oh, well, we're breastfeeding, right? We're giving food to the baby. It's way, way, way more than that. It is, pretty much you're supporting the baby's immune system, and your immune system and your gut are so connected. So it starts from the baby going all the way up until, later in life. So one of the things that I work with people a lot with is called atopic triad. When you are breastfeeding, for the baby, it can actually reduce and even prevent the development of atopic triad. And this is also including food allergies. So when I'm talking to, whether it's an adult or a teenager, and I ask them about the history of allergies, I'm not just talking about environmental allergies or hay fever, but I'm also talking about asthma. Do you have a history of asthma? Do you have a history of having either skin rashes or dermatitis or eczema? And then also, do you have those environmental allergies like rhinitis and then hay fever? And then other things that can also tie into that would be food allergies or food sensitivities as well. So this is where we're talking about pretty much your body is seeing that food as non-self. And so you're developing antibodies to it. And once you develop those antibodies to it, then sometimes various foods that you eat, even though they're healthy, can actually cause a negative response in your body. And it can look like an allergic response. It might be swelling of your, not just of your throat, but like in the face, in your fingers, in your hands, different parts of your body. You might have skin rashes because of eating certain foods. And then you also might even have things like joint pain and brain fog from them. So, breastfeeding can already start to reduce you from having some of those issues, especially as a baby. So that's the first thing. Second thing is that it can also lower a baby's risk of having autoimmune issues or diseases. So those are going to be things like Crohn's disease or diabetes type 1, which is also another autoimmune condition. So things like that. It can also lower their risk of having respiratory infections in general and digestive disorders. So once again, we're supporting the immune system from the very beginning. Remember, before in utero, the baby was getting all of these antibodies from mommy, and now we're having, to supplement that with breast milk. And so they're going to be supporting their immune system that way. Another thing is that it can allow for actually more confident immune response or even a fuller immune response for when the baby is getting vaccinated. And vaccinations is a whole nother story. It could probably be a couple of presentations as well. But, if you're getting vaccinations or if you're staggering vaccinations, either way, the breastfeeding is going to actually help with you having a good immune response, which is what we want. We want you to mount a response so that it protects you and provides immunity. Another thing is that it can help with the development of the baby's jaws, teeth, and actual facial muscles. So all of that suckling action is going to be very important for the development of the physical development of these structures. And then the last thing is that breastfeeding can actually help protect a child against some childhood cancers and even obesity later in life. And so that's another one that definitely tugs at my heartstrings for many people that have had kids that had, childhood cancers. You just want to try to prevent in any way possible. So if we can do breastfeeding as early as possible and for as long as possible, then that's one small thing that we can do to help with preventing or at least lower their risk of having these childhood cancers. So those are all the benefits when it comes to the baby. So breastfeeding benefits both the mom and the baby, and that's how we have to think about it, especially in healthcare. So when you are pregnant and you are actually preparing, to give birth, what are some of the things that you can do to actually help with breastfeeding in the future? So I always say food as medicine. So you want to make sure that you are eating a healthy diet. Eat healthy for you and your baby while you are pregnant. Breast milk is predominantly water. right? So you want to make sure that you're staying hydrated. Hydration is key to so many different things. And it's amazing how we don't realize sometimes that we are even dehydrated until it gets to be, you know, like we have the dry skin or the dry brittle hair. But at that point, and if you're starting to actually feel thirsty and you're like, oh, I'm really parched, you're well past where you should be when it comes to dehydration. So making sure that you stay hydrated, drinking enough but not over drinking is very important. When it comes to the foods that you're eating, calcium and omega-3 rich foods, and I put those together because they're actually kind of like some of the same foods. We're talking about things like bok choy. We're talking about kale, which has always been one of the super greens these days. Broccoli, collard greens. Collard greens, you know, I'm from North Carolina. I'm from the South. So collard greens are a staple. My mom has been staying with me for the last, 10 months or so. And I'm telling you, we eat collard greens just about on a weekly basis. Mm-hmm. And she said they're the best collards ever because I guess, you know, we're closer to the farmers. But collard greens have a lot of calcium in them. So, you know, that's one way that you're already going to be helping with your bone structure. And that's also going to help with the milk component as well. Even if you...
excuse me, hon, there is a question. Do you have a moment to stop for that question?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jessalyn.
Thank you, Dr. Rochelle. I always get questions about tofu, and I usually say something like, you know, in cultures where tofu is grown and produced and eaten as part of a balanced diet with vegetables and fibers, like that might not have some of the effects people are worried about in places like San Rafael, California. I don't know, like I eat tofu and I like it. What do you tell people who have concerns about what I understand to be concerns about estrogen and tofu, but I don't really understand or know what the actual answer fully is there?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So when it comes to the tofu aspect, we're talking about phytoestrogens. So that means plant components that look like or mimic estrogen. The way that I typically feel about tofu is the less processed it is, the better. So if you're talking about things like tempeh or actually eating, you know, the soybeans, that would be great. The tofu where it's really processed and it can be kind of like the strips that you're marinating, I would say try to limit those or have them in reduced amounts. And then I also, for those of my patients that are like vegetarian and then they eat, you know, the meat substitutes that are more so soy-based, I do try to limit them with that too. So I'm trying to get them to have things more well-rounded. So they're getting their protein source from various things, not just from soybeans, not just from the tofu. So, you know, that's where you can go into the other beans and legumes and lentils and things like that. So good question.
And I'm assuming that you'd also want folks to avoid the GMO soy, which is the majority soy in the country.
Yes, exactly.
It has to be organic.
Yes, so totally, you want to avoid anything that's genetically modified. I think I mentioned corn a little bit later as well, and you know there's can be a GMO issue with that. So reading the label and you know following the tracking is going to be important. So yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, great questions. Some other good calcium-rich foods would be things like figs, and then adding the sesame seeds and even the edamame as well, which, you know, you can like slightly have those cooked and chew on those. I also mentioned here about the iron-rich foods. And the reason why I mentioned iron-rich foods, because usually we think about that when it comes to anemia, right? Well, I'm thinking about that because it helps with blood building. You know, milk production does come from blood as well. So you want to make sure that you are building enough blood and have a good support. And that's where the iron-rich foods come in. The black sesame seeds, there's been a lot of talk about them being great. Even the black sesame seed oil has been beneficial. Apricots, spinach, this is where a lot of the beans come in that are going to be iron-rich. So anything that's going to be kind of like bright red. So the kidney beans are going to be good. The lentils, a couple of things I forgot to put up there also would be using like yams, and then also beets. And so for me, I love mixing my yams and beets together, dicing them up and like either roasting them on a sheet pan or sauteing them in a skillet. And then along those lines as well is, utilizing the old school cast iron skillet. The idea behind using the cast iron skillet is that you can actually help your food to absorb some of the iron from that as well. So those are going to be some of the iron rich foods. And then also while you're pregnant, I highly recommend to a lot of my clients, make sure that you're following the clean 15 and avoiding the dirty dozen. And so each year, the Environmental Working Group, and I have their website up there, they will post a list of the clean 15 foods that are going to be the most clean, the ones that don't have pesticides, they're not genetically modified, all of that. And then they will also post a list of the dirty dozen. And so depending on what's going on agriculture-wise, the list will change. So it's really interesting. So I mentioned about the collard greens, right, being really good. On their list of the dirty dozen, they're talking about, oh, and I also mentioned the spinach and kale. So those three things are actually on the dirty dozen list: spinach, kale, collard, and mustard greens. And so, yeah, they're on the dirty dozen. So you have to be very cautious of where you're getting them from, because you want to make sure that they are organic, pesticide-free, non-GMO, all of that. So if you're getting them, buy them organic. It's not saying to avoid them altogether, but just make sure that you know where you're purchasing them from. And a lot of the local farmers markets, I feel like they're pretty good, but just ask questions, And I can give you all that list as well. I actually have it here on my sides, but for the dirty dozen, they included this year strawberries, the spinach, kale, collard greens, mustard greens, nectarines, apples, grapes, cherries, peaches, pears, bell and hot peppers, celery, and tomatoes.
It's like everything.
It is, right? So, that's where we have to be so cautious at this point. We want to make sure that things are pesticide free with our produce.
And for our own gardens.
Yes, exactly. Have your own gardens. Also the community gardens that we have here in the Northern California. Yeah. So those are the things I recommend. Any questions about that as well?
No, looking good.
Cool. So once you have gone through your labor and delivery, how can we actually improve our milk production and the quality? So as I was going back and reviewing some things and like the makeup of milk and all of that, I was reminded that in general, your milk production will actually stay the same. But the amount of the fat and the taste of your milk, that can differ. And so, when we're talking about eating healthy for the baby, getting in those fresh fruits and vegetables, once again, organic is best and all of that. But, thinking about the time limit in which you are breastfeeding, which that's what Jocelyn was just talking about as well. We definitely want to make sure that we know how to latch, and that the latching is going to be an effective latch, because the first part of the breast milk is going to be a little bit thinner, and then the hind part of the breast milk is where we have that good fat that the baby needs, and that's going to be important for the baby's brain as well. So making sure that your diet has those good omega-3s in it will help with that fat content. So when we're talking about the omega-3s, we're talking about, making sure that you have fish at least weekly, making sure you know the source of your fish as well. We always talk about salmon being the best, mackerel is another good one, but I used to keep these little cards in my office where clients could see, which fish had like the less mercury content in them. And, you have to think about the heavy metals and all of that. So tuna's on that list, but you have to know your source for your tuna. Salmon is great, but you need to know your source for your salmon. Wild caught is best. We really typically don't like the farm raised salmon. And you can actually tell the difference when you're looking at them in the store with the color content. Other things outside of fish, we're talking about avocados, we're talking about the seeds and the walnuts and almonds, and then we're also talking about the different oils, right? So I always like to talk to people about using olive oil, but now we have so many different oils available. I've been using flaxseed oil, I've been using safflower oil. So those are important. And then there can actually be a whole nother discussion with that as well on, whether we are cooking at high temperatures or using it as a saute. You don't want to denature or break down your high quality oils. So if you're going to be using something at a high temperature, make sure it is made for that. Olive oil is not made for high temperature. So, it will start to break down and become less beneficial if it's at high temperatures. So you want to use that more so for sauteing, and then also for if you're drizzling it on salads and things like that. Also, other foods that I think about. So choline is a very important factor when it comes to making breast milk. And so when we're looking at the foods that are beneficial in choline, we're talking about egg yolks. Eggs go back and forth with some people of being beneficial, not so beneficial. I personally feel like eggs are beneficial. It's everything within moderation. I feel like the cholesterol that you're getting from them is actually a good cholesterol, as long as you're not eating, like 5 eggs a day. So a good example of that is like my brother, who he doesn't eat 5 eggs a day, but when we're cooking eggs, he's like, can I get 3? And he's like, I only do this on the weekend. So it's like once a week that he might have 3 eggs. So that's more so in moderation. But the egg yolks have the choline, they also have the biotin, things like that in it. Still looking at fish for choline, also the dairy products. And so this is where we're needing to be cognizant as well if we have any dairy allergies or dairy sensitivities ourselves. And then also being mindful of any reactions that the breastfeeding baby is going to be having as well. So the whole, concept too of breastfeeding is to start helping the immune system so that your baby's immune system is not as reactive to foods, right? So if you're eating a good array of foods, then your baby is also eating a good array of foods. So they shouldn't be developing too much sensitivity to like dairy and things like that. And with that being said, there's a whole nother conversation we can have about introducing foods for the baby as well. Other things that have choline, oats, whole grain rice. And so I am a proponent of using whole grain rice, not just the white rice, but like the brown rice that has all of the components in it. That's going to be the healthiest and most beneficial. And then some last tidbits as well when it comes to, improving or supporting your egg quality once the baby is here. Definitely consider the alcohol consumption. So, some people, at least when I was in med school, they were like, if the mom drinks alcohol, then she needs to dump that milk. And we're like, no, don't dump it because, milk is gold. So you have to think about what was the alcohol that was being consumed, how much was it? A thing to note about alcohol consumption is that it can go through to the breast milk. And so because the baby can taste the alcohol, then that might actually make them nurse less because it's a taste that they don't really care for. So, you should try to reduce the alcohol consumption and, limit it. And then also making sure you're staying hydrated to kind of thin out any alcohol that was consumed, but I'm not a proponent of utilizing or drinking alcohol during breastfeeding. And then THC from the marijuana and use of other recreational drugs. So those can also pass through breast milk to the baby, and they can actually cause the baby to become intoxicated or even addicted. So we definitely want to express caution with that. And I always want to talk about that, especially in the Bay Area, where marijuana use is a little bit heavier. We want to make sure that the breast milk is good quality for our baby, and we don't want to go ahead and have them, addicted to anything as well. So those are the main components that I think about when it comes to how to improve your breast milk quality. Any questions with that? No.
Sorry, I had a question about what you were saying about introducing foods for the baby.
Can you be a little louder, please?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I had a question about what you were saying about like introducing foods for the baby. Like, so for example, like if somebody that is lactose intolerant and that mother like tends to stay away from like dairy because of her own like kind of like dietary restrictions, do you think that would be something that would pass on to the baby? Like, would they now grow up like lactose intolerant, or is that a silly question? I think actually it's genetic, isn't it? Anyway,
Yeah,
so
not silly. So, and this is where it's like nurture and nature, right? So, of course, there are some things that can be passed on from mother to infant. That's always going to be the case for anything genetically. But then also there is the, environmental nurture aspect. So the way we have been talking about it has been, when you're introducing foods, just because you might have a sensitivity to it doesn't necessarily always mean that the baby is going to have a sensitivity to it. So at least, trying it, but when you try it, there's a way of, it's almost like, when I do an elimination diet with people, but it's in the reverse. So you're trying things out just a little bit at a time. It's not like, let me just go all in and I'm gonna let the baby have yogurt and milk and cheese and everything like that, so just gradually introducing it. Test it, see how they are with a little bit. Don't test it for the rest of the week, then maybe test it again the following week. So doing it slowly like that. But still, being mindful, because if you did have a sensitivity, it's a possibility, that the child could, but it's not a guarantee. Yeah.
Can I add something to that?
Yeah.
I'm curious. When I was pregnant, I'm lactose intolerant mildly, but when I was pregnant, that stopped completely, and I was able to have milk without any issue. And so I did continue breastfeeding, having milk. I craved cereal like no other. I just had so much cereal. And so then as soon as I stopped breastfeeding, probably somewhere in the middle of my breastfeeding journey, I began to get that sensitivity to the lactose again. But I was able to have milk in my system while I was breastfeeding. So I'm just curious if there's anything to that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And a comment. So sometimes we will see this happen where people's dietary restrictions change whenever they're pregnant. And so things that you didn't used to like, all of a sudden you do like. And then sometimes we're wondering, well, is it the baby that's liking it? And I'm not sure. So after you gave birth, did you go back to being lactose intolerant? Or are you still okay?
It started again somewhere in the middle of my breastfeeding journey. So I'm no longer able to drink milk anymore, but there was a period when I was just breastfeeding and no longer pregnant that my body was able to process it.
Yeah. So in that case, it's kind of like the baby, was the one that was kind of wanting it and could utilize it. And that's how come you're able to tolerate it. So, yeah. But yeah, I've heard so many different stories. Can you add to that too, Samsara?
Yeah, there was so many things I was allergic to before I got pregnant. And pretty much all of those things went away and have stayed away after I had my twins. So, pregnancy is this big reset, and that reset acts differently for different people, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Also, my pregnancy was the longest duration of happiness that I'd had in my life up to that point, and I think that had a lot to do with it too. That I was just authentically, I had a miserable childhood, but then I had this beautiful pregnancy, and it just reset my whole life. And just talking about Jessam's oxytocin, I was happy for 9 months.
Yeah.
And I think that affects our immune systems very much.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
And
And I just
follow
want
up question on that, the lactose thing. Like I have a mild intolerance depending on the quality of milk I found. But I was wondering if someone has found like an enzyme or a probiotic that allows them to tolerate dairy, would that be safe for them to use while they're making milk?
Yeah.
To have like dairy aspects, benefits, but without as much intolerance to make it comfortable, and baby gets the second party exposure to dairies.
Yeah, no, I love that idea of still taking probiotics even while breastfeeding, So yeah, that can be beneficial. And we've done it for even when, it's kind of like treating a baby for if they're having gastritis or just gassiness and colic and things like that. Then sometimes we'll actually have the woman put kind of like either a liquid probiotic or the powder on her nipple as well. Yeah, and that way they can get it with suckling.
Oh, that's brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Does probiotic come in a liquid at any, of the manufacturer that does liquid probiotic?
I'm thinking about the prebiotic ones, not necessarily. Yeah, a probiotic with lactobacillus. But if you're mixing it, or even like add a little, I don't know, applesauce or something and just place a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, something just very simple like that. And that can also help with breast health too. So if they're having anything like cracking, you want to prevent infection, then the probiotics can help with some of that too.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
In the comments, Mika said acidophilus comes in liquid form, and Zaria said Yakult is also a liquid.
Yakult, yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful, helpful stuff.
Yeah.
Well, any more questions for
Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Earlier you were talking about the fish and you said the coloration in the store. So I had asked, are the farmed fish more colorful because they're like dyed or something, or is it that the wild fish are the more colorful ones and the farmed fish are more like the pale? I wasn't actually sure. I think it usually says so though, right? Like they have to label it now.
Yeah, they have to label it. And
Okay.
if I remember correctly, the farm, I think is like less pink.
Okay.
It's pale, more pale. I don't know how to describe it. It's just more pale.
Less rich salmon color. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No, good questions.
They are very good questions. Is that your presentation, my friend? I took the risk of sharing so we could all see each other a little better or differently.
Yeah. Oh no, thank you for that. I think I've got like 2 more slides and then I'll be good. I'm sorry, there's like a little gnat flying around.
Oh, no, go for it.
I think I smell good, that's why.
You do, bet you do.
All right, so let's see. Oh, so I wanted to go over some of the herbs because I always get this question, and this is where I guess the naturopathic doctor in me comes out, especially when I'm working with women that are, working with their OBGYNs and they've been told, whatever supplements you're on, stop taking everything. And, I just want to reiterate to people that herbs are seen as some herbs are seen as food when it comes to the FDA, and they are regulated. A lot of people think that some things are not regulated when it comes to natural medicine, but they are. And so we're looking, for me, when I'm talking to a pregnant woman, I'm not necessarily wanting them to be on like all of the capsules and things like that. I prefer things like teas and tinctures, sometimes capsules if it's something where it's like an iron component, then I would do that. But the teas, the tinctures, I feel like we can improve them as opposed to doing something where it's like a whole nutraceutical where it's herbs and supplements together. And it's just way more, I don't want to say fillers, but it's just way more things and components. So this is where I start to go more into like you're either doing a really specific herbal formula for people or herbal tea for people or single herbs in general. So that way, if something, does cause any type of reaction, I can say, let's just go ahead and pull that one as well. So when it comes to milk production for women, these are kind of like some of the main herbs that people will go to. And so they're called the galactagogue herbs. And I preferably like to use them as a tea. Sometimes I'll do a tincture. Tinctures are usually either going to be in an alcohol base or a glycerin base. I will err for the glycerin base. And so sometimes that has to be either made separately or there's a company that has already made it. And so that way I'm already not giving them, extra little bit of alcohol. But things that I've been finding that you can add to your foods or even just, make a tea out of. Nettle is a great one. And so stinging nettle, it can be used for so many different things. I do think about it when it comes to women's health, hormone balancing. I also think about it when it comes to allergies. And so it's just another one that you can do a tea of. I think it's traditional medicinals that has a stinging nettle tea. And so that one you can use to actually help with your milk production. Fennel can be added to your foods that you're eating. So can anise, even the caraway and the dill. And then, if you're talking about getting in those good, healthy omega-3s through fish, then you can actually use the dill as well with the foods that you're eating as a seasoning. And then fenugreek is interesting because I actually had a client who was not pregnant and was not, necessarily trying to get pregnant, but I did a hormone panel on her just to check and make sure and see where her levels were at. And I always add in prolactin just to kind of do a quick assessment of the pituitary and make sure that there's not an elevation of the prolactin. And hers was elevated. And so I was like, what's going on? Like, none of your other hormones are elevated. The prolactin's elevated. So I'm going down my list of questions to see if she's pregnant or might not know she is. And then she's like, oh yeah, by the way, I've been taking fenugreek for my hair, skin, and nails. And I was like, okay, I wish you would have told me that, 2 weeks ago when we did this test. But the fenugreek actually had helped with elevating her prolactin levels. So that is a case study where it definitely does work. But using that one, you can do for capsules usually for that one. And then the raspberry leaf tea. This is actually another good one that I use for my moms that are trying to get pregnant and if we're regulating their hormones, but you can use it afterwards as well. And it's just a nice one. It's almost like an envelope around the body, an envelope around the pelvis. Raspberry leaf is just really, it's a uterine tonic and support. And so it can also help with the milk production. So those are some herbs that people will typically use. And then we can add in some other supportive herbs. The main one that I put down here was milk thistle. And so milk thistle is one that I love because it's a liver support. Liver support is going to be so important when it comes to hormone regulation. But then also when you think about everything that you eat and that you consume is being broken down and then processed by the liver. So that's like those components after the processing within the liver go into the breast milk. So if you're supporting how you are processing and breaking down foods and nutrients into like the most best small chemical components, then milk thistle is going to be an aid with that. So that's why I like to add in milk thistle as just kind of like a extra tonifier in an indirect way. But once again, you know, most of these would be used either single, sometimes they can be used together, but I do try to get most things in with the food or by adding, you know, these different ones like the phenylalanine to some foods that people, and then you can explore with different seasonings and spices. And then when it comes to communicating with your provider and communicating what supplements you're on, what medications you're on, I have a list of questions here that I found in one of my books. I think it's great because I'm a huge proponent in a patient advocating for themselves. And a lot of times we don't go into the doctor knowing what to even ask. And so this would be good before, you know, you even go into the, oh, just stop taking everything. You know, let's get some information and background on that. So what's the recommended dose for me? How much of that dose would my baby actually consume per day? So if I'm taking it, then what amount do you feel like is going to be going in through the breast milk? What are the known adverse effects of taking it? And could these effects occur from actually small doses or an actual overdose? A lot of times when we are reporting or reviewing the reported adverse effects, it's usually due to an overdose. So that's how come companies are so specific with, you know, take just 2 capsules within a 6-hour time period, because they've seen with research that if people are going over this amount or doing an overdose, then it causes these adverse effects. But if you're doing it at the suggested dose, then are you going to have those adverse effects? Probably not. So getting clarity on what they mean by that.
Over here.
Mm.
Come over here to Abuela in Spanish, right?
Okay, but if you're not presenting, please turn off your, please mute. Somebody needs to mute.
There is a question from Jennifer Camera in the chat. Fenugreek has been getting a bad rep in the lactation community lately. What precautions should be taken with fenugreek?
Really, I hadn't heard that it's been getting a bad rep. I would say if someone is concerned about that, then definitely, so it's hard for me to answer that question without knowing exactly like everything that was going on with a specific person. If they were told like, don't take fenugreek because it's been causing XYZ. So once again, knowing and working with someone who, an herbalist, a naturopathic doctor, someone that can research and make sure that medications, all herbal supplements, all of that is well accounted for, so that we make sure there's not any contraindications or any of these adverse reactions. But yeah, I hadn't heard that it was starting to get a bad rep. Had you heard that? Cynthia?
Yes. Hi. So I'm sorry, it was my question. I wanted to just say that it's been some different things that people have said. One, some folks were saying that it actually decreased their milk supply more, which I believe that there's other factors that could be contributing to that. And then also, like, if people have thyroid issues or on certain medications, that they probably shouldn't use fenugreek. So I just wanted to know from a doctor, like, what if there were if this was like general like information, or is this something that kind of has been mostly anecdotal based on people's experiences?
Yeah, no, that's a great question and a great point to make as well. So look, as you were saying that, I just thought about a couple of different things. So yeah, this is one reason why I definitely recommend to people, not going in and doing any necessarily herbal medicine or herbal treatment themselves, and having someone like myself go through, because yes, if you are having certain, other conditions like thyroid issues, other things like Crohn's disease, there's various conditions where I definitely am wanting to make sure that things are not contraindicated. So I would say it is a possibility. And this is where I always tell people too, I'm like, it is herbal medicine. It's not just, we can mix and match and do things, but you have to know and be aware of the chemical components, and then also knowing the contraindications. So just because it's a herb and it is natural doesn't mean that it's not going to cause you any harm, and it's always going to be great, and you're not going to have any allergic reactions, because it can. And so that's why taking a person's history and knowing all of those other, conditions that they have could be affected. So I can see, depending on if they were taking other thyroid medication or the thyroid support herbs that we'll do, where fenugreek could possibly interfere. And so that's kind of like the same thing too with, being cautious with iodine and, selenium and things like that, all of those cofactors. So, but yeah, making sure that you are speaking to someone that can look into it and look at all of those pictures as well. So
it's a good reminder for why we shouldn't take advice around these things from Facebook groups.
Oh, yeah.
And why we really should work with people who are trained to understand that there's no one size fits all for humanity.
Right.
There just isn't, not in medicine, which is where I think medicine falters. And people who just like, well, my cousin took it and it worked for her, so it's going to work for me.
Right.
Honor our own uniqueness.
Yes.
And with somebody who will work with our uniqueness to find exactly what's right for us.
Yes. And I think that's one of the highlights of naturopathic medicine. And especially for me as a naturopathic doctor, because we all practice differently as well. But yeah, every single protocol is going to be unique for every person. And it's because of understanding that uniqueness. Raspberry leaf is going to be great for some people. It might not be great for others. Some people might hate the taste, So yeah, very good point. And that's a good question. Very good question. And then also the rest of the questions that you can ask the provider would be, could those effects from the medication or the supplement be from small doses, or are they from an overdose? But then are those effects rare or common? And then also, are they mild, easily reversible, or do they actually cause life-threatening issues? So once again, advocating and asking questions for yourself regarding the things like we were just talking about. And making, your doctor well aware. So anyone that I have that is getting pregnant, got pregnant, their very first question, that I let them know, I'm like, let me know as soon as you get pregnant, because we're probably going to be adjusting and stopping some of these supplements, some of the herbs, and then we're going to be reassessing what is most beneficial for you based on your condition. A good example is, one person might have Crohn's disease and, be on a lot of different supplements just to support their digestive health, as opposed to someone else who has hypothyroidism. They're going to be on different supplements, different herbs. And so how I go about treating them when they get pregnant is going to be different. And then the last things, like Jessalyn was talking about as well, is going to be the stress. So I think that we don't emphasize this enough. And I talk about it with women even before preconception, because it's going to, when you work with stress reduction, it's actually going to help you conceive. And then, I always tell people everything that you're doing for conception, you have to think about you're doing that for pregnancy. And then everything you're doing for pregnancy, you have to think about you're doing it for after the baby is here. So stress reduction goes into all of that. You have to be relaxed whenever you're nursing. You don't want to be, thinking about and trying to handle so many different things. And I think of it as more of this energy component as well. You are connecting, you're bonding with your baby. They pick up on energies. They're already energetic beings. They will pick up on energies. They will pick up on when someone walks into the room and they're upset. And then all of a sudden the baby's starting to cry, So doing the stress reduction, making sure that you are relaxed with nursing is going to be really important. I also say utilize sitz baths and just, like bubble baths in general. You can do the hot bath. That's actually going to help with improving your pelvic flow and circulation. So it's going to support the uterus. And then that's going to support your hormones for breastfeeding. And then also you can do contrast. So that's where you do alternating hot and cold and you end with cold. So that in that sense, and you can actually do that on your breast as well if you want to even be more specific, do alternating hot and cold. So it creates a pumping action. When you are adding on the hot compress or the warm compress, is going to dilate and open things up. When you do the cold compress, it's going to contract. So when you alternate, it's going to cause the pumping action. And then you want to kind of end with a cool. And then the cool should only stay on for, let's say maybe 2 minutes. The hot you can do for longer. You can do it for 10 minutes. And so that pumping action actually helps move things as well. We talked about the skin to skin contact that can also help, and that's going to include doing breast massage. Before you get pregnant, you should already doing breast massage or lymphatic massage, which is actually you assessing your breasts and doing a breast exam. And so you can continue that after having the baby to improve with lactation, doing the stroking from the top to the bottom as well. Meditation, breathing exercises, all of those are going to be important. It's going to lower your stress. It's going to put you into that parasympathetic state instead of that sympathetic state where everything is shut down so that you can run from the bear. And instead you want to be comforting like the mama bear. So you want to calm things down with meditation. So for a lot of people, I actually recommend using the Insight Timer app. That's my favorite. You can find so many different things. You can set it for a certain time. It can be chants, it can be music, it can be guided meditation, journaling, all of that. So those would be very helpful if you're feeling like you're starting to get stressed about breastfeeding or you're starting to stress about the latching, then doing those would be really important. Also aromatherapy. We talk about, do we use essential oils and not just the aromas, but the essential oils topically. We kind of oppose it more so topically, but we want to do it more so in the air and in the aroma. So, having a diffuser with like lavender would be great. Or for me, I love eucalyptus. So you can play around with the different ones that actually will help with stimulating you, but also calming you. Listening to some relaxing music. Some people will, feel like this is also helping with the baby's IQ when you start to play classical music and things like that. So, doing things that are just going to be more relaxing, like the music, is going to be helpful. And then the last thing, acupressure and or acupuncture can be beneficial as well. So seeing an acupuncturist, if you're going to want to get the actual needles placed, but then you can also check on some different pressure points as well that have to do with kind of like letting milk down. Usually they're going to be around the breast as well. And so you think about that's going back into that breast massage. And then I also think about on the bottom of the feet, you can do some pressure points there as well, because it's that bringing things down component. And then making sure that you are physically supporting your body. So resting, which we talked about, is so important. That's also going to support your immune system. So making sure that you're getting in enough sleep. The 7 to 8 hours of sleep is important, but we also know with breastfeeding moms and new moms, this can be difficult. So get sleep when you can. It's so important. Get sleep when you can. That's actually going to help with your relaxation as well. And still moving your body. You know, yoga is really great. We've got prenatal yoga that you can still do as well after you have had a baby. You can do dancing, you can do qigong, which is like a little meditative shaking as well. So just moving your body on a daily basis, that's also going to help with improving your endorphins, decreasing the stress. So just remember all of those basic things that you're going to need to help with your milk support. And then the last thing is going to be about just in general environmental exposures, how we want to reduce them. So we already talked about making sure that you're getting the organic foods, buying free range, grass fed, if we're eating meat, hormone free as well, limiting your plastic use. And I feel like I talk about this more in North Carolina because here we're well aware of it, but not heating up things in plastics, heating it up in glass because we don't want the plastics to actually leach any chemicals into our systems that can be passed through breast milk as well. Also lessen your chemical exposure when it comes to the household products and any personal body care products too. So once again, going to the environmental working group, you can actually look up personal care products. So whether that's face creams or like I can't even remember the name of it because I don't wear it, foundation, makeup stuff. Yeah, you can look all of that up as well on their website. And then making sure you use filtered water and having air purifiers are going to be important, especially as we're moving into fire season here in Northern California. So air purifiers are going to be important because we know that those small particulate matters, they're going to affect our lungs. They can cause more inflammation in our systems. And then we're still not sure what is going to be passed through the breast milk when it comes to that. I know that was a lot of information, but take home, relax and feed, nurture yourself and nurture your baby.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
You cracked me up, Rachel. You're all like, I don't think I have much to say. You wrote that. I have it on text. I could screenshot it. I mean, please.
I didn't think I had much to share, but
and here definitely the most important part is, well, the very important part is your contact information. We definitely, go back to that, girl.
Yeah, I'll go back. Sorry.
Let that linger a little bit. There you go. So definitely the big recommend from this practice to Dr. Rochelle. We're fortunate we have quite a few, more than the rest of the world, it seems like, in this country at least, of wonderful naturopathic doctors, but you're my favorite. I gotta tell you, you're my favorite.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm happy to share the knowledge. I am.
So please feel free to share the information with clients and have them get that individualized healthcare that is imperative for us, for all of us. Super, super important.
Thank you, guys.
Okay. So we're gonna stop screen sharing with you.
Okay.
Thank you so much again. And we are running short of time, but I do want us to honor the self-care piece. And so we just have 1 minute. Everybody just yawn and stretch. And our lactation goddess Tanifer will be next to talk to us. So I'm actually timing a minute. Alrighty, folks. We are back. Madame Jennifer, are you available?
Yes, I am.
I am so happy.
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me, for having me. I'm gonna come on screen in just a moment. I'm multitasking here because
Of course you are. Beautiful picture.
I'm cooking. Thank you.
Look at that person. Goodness. He's so grown.
Yes. So this time last year, he was only like 2 weeks.
You just had exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I literally just had him this time last year, and I just put him down for a nap. Yes, so he's sleeping. But thank you so much for doing this event and for all the work that you do to support families here in the Bay Area, and all that you do to support up and coming birth workers, and all the education and teaching that you've been doing for so many years for us. I'm personally so appreciative of you and the work that you do and all the beautiful people that you bring along the way.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So I guess I'll introduce myself for those of you who do not know me. My name is Tanifer Lumukanda Kamara. I am an international board certified lactation consultant. I am also a doula, full spectrum doula, and postpartum healer. I don't do as much births anymore. I'm more so focusing on the postpartum. I am also a certified Yoni Steam practitioner. I am a mother of 4 birth and breastfed children. My youngest is a year old. My oldest is 15, and I have an 8 and 6-year-old. And I'm a native here of Oakland, native of the Bay Area. I work at Highland, and I also have my private practice, TLC Consulting and Maternal Healing, where I see families either in their homes, Birthland midwifery. So I'm over in the Temescal Alley on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You can catch me for an office visit there. And I continue to educate and teach throughout the Bay Area for both professionals and for families as well. Yeah, so I'm pretty busy. Just the 4 kids alone would be enough, but I'm an overachiever. So I do a lot. And in that breath, I'm gonna take a deep breath. And I'm gonna breathe. Because just thinking about all the things that I do on top of being a mother, sometimes just takes my breath away. It can be overwhelming. And I didn't prepare slides for today, so I hope that's okay.
Of course.
But I want to speak to the theme of this year's Black Breastfeeding Week, which is collective rest for collective power. And it's something that I've been speaking on a lot throughout this pandemic, especially for our Black mamas. I have a support group that I do every Friday night. It's called the Midnight Milk Club. And I started this in January of 2020 because I used to get a lot of phone calls late in the night, text messages, DMs, all sorts of things of moms in distress, moms having questions, worries, concerns around lots of things. And it turns out that little did I know we would be living in a pandemic, and that need for virtual support after hours will be something that will become so vital to new mothers, to pregnant people in that time. And so one of the things that I often speak to them about is our rest and how we heal and how we nurture and how we care for ourselves throughout the period, the perinatal period. So during pregnancy, after birth, postpartum, and breastfeeding. And as someone who supports other mothers and their families, my own rest and restoration was essential so that I could continue to do this work. And so I was pregnant during 2020. And the demand for Midnight Milk Club and the demand for people who were needing support just increased. And I made the decision to step back from my work in the hospital so that I could feel safe, so that I could be present for my children who were now at home and not really understanding what was really going on in the world, but also for my unborn child, for the baby that was in my womb.
Yeah.
And knowing all of the statistics, and having, worked for so long in maternal and child health and working on these disparities and working on the research side of it and looking at the numbers and, evaluating like what's happening with births in the hospital, I was like, there's the only way that I would feel good is if I can honor and demonstrate this in my own life. That I won't be of any service to anyone if I can't achieve the piece that I needed to have a healthy pregnancy and have a healthy baby and a healthy birth. And so I took time away from work. And in that time, I was actually able to really meet people where they were and provide virtual lactation services to people from all over the US and all over the world. And one of the things that just kept coming back was, we need to rest. Mamas need rest. I needed rest. We're dealing with a lot of anxiety. We're dealing with this culture of we have to be busy, we have to be productive. Okay. And it's not necessarily serving us well, particularly people who are most affected by this pandemic, particularly, Black women who have the highest mortality rates. Our babies have the highest infant mortality rates, and we suffer at a greater rate from other issues and disease. And so there was this connection that just kept coming back that was linked to our healing, that was linked to our health. And that all comes back to rest. One of the things that I also feel is really important is to make that connection between our rest and our breastfeeding and just the postpartum period in general. A lot of times when people aren't meeting their own breastfeeding goals, we have to look at what else is going on. when people are having issues around breastfeeding, if the babies aren't feeding well, they aren't getting enough weight, what else is going on? A lot of times people are sacrificing, they're sacrificing something during this time. And it's like, okay, the common denominator usually is we don't live in a society that really fosters the healing and rest that a person needs after they give birth.
Not at all.
So what does that have to do? How do we connect that with breastfeeding and how well people are able to breastfeed and how long they're able to breastfeed, how they're able to initiate breastfeeding? Well, let's talk about the birth. How did that baby get here? There are so many ways in which how the baby was born impacts their ability to breastfeed. What interventions and things were used, if any? What was the environment in which that baby was born in? Was that mama on IV fluids throughout her whole labor? Was she induced? Did she have an epidural? Did she receive fentanyl? Did she receive anesthesia? All of these have a impact on that baby's ability to breastfeed. Were mom and baby separated? Okay, all of these things have an impact. And so when we look at these circumstances that are happening around birth, and if they had a very highly medicated birth, well, there's not much that we can do to reverse that. But the one thing that we can do to help move things along is we can ensure that that mom or that birthing person and that baby have uninterrupted time together, that they get to do continuous skin to skin as much as possible, and that all of her needs are met. One of the things that I have an issue with in the hospital is this notion that after someone gives birth, they're supposed to get up and do all these things, go to the bathroom on their own. They're supposed to, have a cheerful smile and be nice and warm and fuzzy with you every time you come in the room to poke and prod at them and their baby. And it's unrealistic. We don't give people enough time to recover, especially if they had a medicated or a surgical birth. We're not giving them enough time. And so when I'm working with the family, I ask questions about what was your birth like? What happened? Was it medicated? Where did you get birth? Who was part of your birth team? Who's supporting you? Who do you have to support you? Let's bring them in. Let's talk to them. Let's talk about this breastfeeding and what that means. If father is there or the partner is present, let's talk about what breastfeeding requires. Okay. It doesn't necessarily require her to exert a whole lot of physical energy. But the amount of work that her body is doing just by sitting there and breastfeeding is very much like running a marathon. It is very much like, getting up and doing some, aerobic activity in the way that the body burns calories. And it doesn't appear like much because it literally just looks like she's just sitting there with a baby on her breast. But the collective energy that requires for her body to produce milk, the hormonal process, the neurological process, everything that is happening on a molecular and cellular level within her body requires a lot of energy. So that level of energy requires a level of rest and recuperation. So what are some of the things that we can do to support breastfeeding, especially in the early postpartum period and throughout? So one, making sure that she has meals. The last thing that someone who just gave birth should have to do is think about making food for herself. Someone should be serving her. Somebody should be bringing her a bowl of food. Okay. Collard greens were mentioned earlier. A bowl of collard greens was literally the first thing that I had. I drank some pot liquor, literally the first thing that I had after pushing my baby out. And I got pictures to prove it. Why? Because my doula brought over a pot of collard greens. And that was literally the first thing that I had, was a sip of the juice from the collard greens.
Yay, doulas.
Yes. So when we think about in terms of the nutrition, what she should be eating during this time, warm foods, foods with broths, liquids, soft things that are easily digestible, because we don't want to clog up, you know, her bowels and stuff, because it take a minute to get the bowels kind of moving again after giving birth. So we want things that are going to be easy on a digestive system. We want things that are going to be hydrating. Okay. Hydration and the connection to breastfeeding has been talked about. It's very important. Okay. So what can we do to help a new breastfeeding mom? Make sure she has food. The Mom postpartum program that delivers postpartum meals to moms here in Oakland. Excellent. We need more of that. More of that. Yes. Coconut water. Absolutely. What else? If they have other children, you need help taking care of the other children. Even if it's somebody just coming over to read the siblings a story at bedtime, or taking the other children to the park out to play, or just playing with them at home. There's so many things. She shouldn't have to worry about laundry for at least the first month and a half. Okay. There's so many things that we can do, simple things. Visitors coming over, fine. You need a list of things to do. Don't come over empty-handed.
Please.
And don't come over just to socialize and look at the baby. Pick up a broom, sweep something, wash a dish. You know, allow that new mom time to rest. Okay? It's so important. How much rest do they need? As long as it takes for them to feel recovered. Let me tell you, 6 weeks after having the baby, I was still like, ooh, I think I need another 6 weeks. We were still in the thick of the pandemic. So my husband was like, not trying to let too many people come in the house. And I was like, please let somebody come over and help me. Please let them come in. You know, you're going to have to do the bulk of the cooking and cleaning for a while. He was okay with that. I said, okay, I'll do it. Yeah. Other things in postpartum. I'm so glad that Dr. Rochelle spoke about the herbs and things postpartum. Now, in most cases, with breastfeeding, the hormones really control the breastfeeding. And then the baby's frequency of feeding kind of continues the process and keeps the milk going. And so not everybody will need to use galactagogues to help with their milk production. But the wonderful thing is there are lots of foods that have these things occurring naturally. So like fenugreek is in curry. Curry powders contain fenugreek, turmeric, ginger, and other spices and things. Great food for lactation. Coconut milk. Okay. I had a recipe that I learned in Morocco for a lentil soup. And I add coconut milk to it. And it's something that I will bring to mothers postpartum because it's nourishing, it's warming, and it helps aid in lactation. Okay. Another thing that I talk to many of the moms that I work with about is asking for help. Black women especially, we have to learn to ask for help. One of the things that I said to them is we have to step away from just being the help and actually getting the help that we need. And so I had them practice. So you're going to practice asking for help. This is what you're going to do. You're going to sit down. You need something, ask somebody to hand it to you. Even if you could surely get up and get it yourself, you're just going to practice doing it. Who knew that so many people had a hard time just asking for help? Just asking, not because we can't do it, but sometimes it's okay. You're doing a whole lot. You don't have to do it all. We can't, a lot of times we harbor negative feelings and emotions because we think people should know what we need. And I hear a lot of moms say, well, they should have known that I needed this or I needed that. Or you ask them, well, what do you need? Oh, I don't know. I don't need nothing. And the next thing you know, they are crying and upset because something's happening. They needed somebody to go pick up one of the kids from school. Or they needed, just whatever it was, some more diapers or something. But we don't think about asking for help. We don't think about all the little, minute details that we actually need. So let me see. Hold on one second. Okay. I'm not going to take too much of your time, but
sorry, I do not want to cut you off, but I do want to folks take care of themselves.
Yes, absolutely. So I just want to stress the importance of and the connection between rest and lactation and breastfeeding, and the importance of honoring that postpartum period. Honoring that sacred time, and that we begin to make traditions around postpartum, because ultimately it's those postpartum traditions that actually benefit and support breastfeeding. Nurturing the new mother, celebrating the new mother. When new parents are able to relax and ease into the rhythm of parenting a new child, when their needs are taken care of, then the breastfeeding isn't so hard. But from what I see, there's a lot of struggle with breastfeeding. And there's a lot of messages out there that are telling parents that breastfeeding is hard, that it's unattainable, that you won't be able to do it, you won't make enough milk. That's all people are seeing. They keep selling us more and more products, many of which we don't need. They got vibrating breast massagers. That's great and all, but you don't need that. Your hands work well. Let's touch our bodies. Let's massage our breasts. Let's put a hot compress. I love what the doctor said about alternating between the hot and the cold, because this is my recommendation for engorgement. I tell them heat helps the milk to flow. Okay. Cold is if we want to restrict things. Most of the times, I'm not recommending using cold unless you're severely engorged. Okay. In many traditions, in fact, cold is not even supposed to be anywhere near the body in the postpartum period. We're supposed to be staying warm, eating foods that warm you from the inside out. Those ice pads, no. We need to be warming these mothers, because that warmth is going to trigger that oxytocin. That warmth is going to help that milk to flow. And it's going to help her to heal. So if you all would like more information around postpartum healing, I provide postpartum healing services. I also do postpartum closing ceremonies. And I would love to talk more about it. If anyone has any questions, you can find me on my website, www.toniferlc.com. I'll put that in the chat. You can also follow me on Instagram, Urban Matriarch, or Blessed by TLC is my business page. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Mwah.
You're welcome.
Yay.
My girls want to say hi.
Hi.
Hey, babies, how are you?
Good.
Goodness, you're just growing up so beautiful. Remember when they were tiny? Blessings on your house, my friend. Hope you can hang out with us for a little bit more. Okay, that was just wonderful. Just wonderful. So I want to, who might be lactating at the present moment?
I am.
Jamie is?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. That's wonderful. And Jennifer and Kiana is also lactating as well? Well, we're going to have a minute of celebration of your decision to breastfeed your baby or feed your baby by your body on your breast. If you would like to be on camera, that would be great. You don't have to be, but I just wanted to know if there was some lactating folks in there. And of course, there's ways to drape your little one or position the camera so that you're not, that you are honoring your own sense of modesty. But I do want to take a minute right now before we move on to Andrea to honor that and have that minute latch in. Are you all up for that, folks who are lactating?
Yeah, I'm down.
Bless you. So in a minute, you'll be able to see that I am lighting a candle. Here's the candle. We want to send this light to all of our lactating citizens, all our breastfeeding mamas. all our body feeding parents. We want them to feel our love and our support and our care for them, our respect for them, for doing this beautiful natural act in a world that has not much respect for beautiful natural things, including the earth that we sit on. So we wanted to just lift you up and give you thanks. Thank you for what you're doing for your own body so that you'll live long upon this earth. Thank you for what you are doing for your little ones so that they will flourish and be people who maybe make better decisions than the people are making right now. Where I'm very hopeful for the new generations. Every new baby is a new opportunity to get it right, the way I look at things. And so let's just take a minute now. And if folks who are breastfeeding or lactating, body feeding, if they feel comfortable being on camera, that's fine. If not, if you want to breastfeed your child off camera, that's fine. So here comes a minute starting right now.
So busy with life, you wanna throw your hands in the sky. And I know the times you wanna leave. And life can be a beast. Breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, breathe out. Calm down.
Thank you very much to our beautiful lactating families, and thank you all for supporting them. That beautiful song was written by my friend Hayam, who gave us permission to use it. I use it in my Mama meditation series, my Mama Moment of Meditation series that's on our Oakland Better Birth page. I started doing that when the pandemic started because my clients were freaking out, understandably, and I wanted to give them an opportunity on Fridays to just kind of center in with me. And then I became so one-centered I had to stop doing it, but I'm going to go back to it. So, where's the lovely Zandria? One of the things I love, there you are, I'm gonna pin you.
Hello.
Hello, let me pin Jennifer. I'm just, for a person who did not know what to do with Zoom a year and a half ago, I'm just like a little pro right now. So what's wonderful about our gatherings is that you get to hear all these beautiful folks with different levels of learning and understanding and coming at things from different directions. And I think that that's fabulous. I think that we all need to listen, think, learn, and then decide what is best for us. So I think that overlap is very exciting.
Mm-hmm.
So, Andrea, and who I adore, and I had the pleasure of being her childbirth educator long ago.
Long time ago. Long time.
Who's your kid?
He just turned 10 in June.
What?
I know, he's enormous. He's over there watching. He started cooking dinner this evening because he likes to cook burgers.
God bless.
But then he went to reach for something and burned himself and was like just distraught after that.
Bless his heart.
Not a bad burn, put a little cannabis oil on it. We're good.
There you go.
So,
Definitely, Zandrea worked with us when I was working with our beautiful teen mom population. Another provider who they just adore, have beautiful memories of, learning about nutrition and, you know, how to cook and how to feed them their beautiful selves. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I miss that work.
It
was lovely.
Just magical. It was just magical.
Yes.
And so I'm going to have you go on. Just to let you know, again, I don't want to rush people. We will be late, I think approximately 15 minutes late, because there's one more presenter who's in a video after Zandrea. Please hang out. I would love it. Take it away, my dear.
Ta-da! All right, so I am going to try to keep it short, but if people have questions, please ask. I will preface this with, I am no expert. I got some training. I know some stuff, and that's the information I'm going to give you. And I used to work with, I used to live in California once upon a time, and I worked close with Samsara after she became our child birthing coach. I couldn't, at the time, I didn't know that I could afford her to be my doula, and I chose somebody else to do that, and that was a mistake. And then I took Samsara's training, I sat through it and was able to be a nutritional doula, and learned what a doula is supposed to do. And was like flabbergasted at, they don't leave the room, they don't go to dinner, they don't, okay, gotcha. And so was really interested in working alongside Samsara and all of the amazing doulas that go through her program. Even my little cousin who's 20, I've already sent her to Samsara. I'm like, you want to be a doula? This is the program you need to go to. So even though she's here on the East Coast. So I love you dearly. Thank you for bringing us all together once again.
Happy Black Week.
Yes, hearts, love. I'm looking at the comments. So during the pandemic, speaking of rest, thank you for that, Jennifer. I was grateful in some way to be able to stop moving, but I wasn't resting. I wasn't. My brain was going 100 miles a minute. I definitely fell into a depression, and didn't want to go outside, even when things started opening up. No, I don't even want to be outside anymore. Just started feeling really closed off. And I'm an outgoing, outdoorsy, I need to be outside and breathing fresh air kind of person. And so it took a toll on me, and I started studying. I picked up different studies. So I started studying yoga. I went for my second yoga teacher training. And then I also studied cannabis, and I went to a program called, it's a cannabis certification program, and it's out of Pacific College of Health and Sciences over in Cali, because y'all got our thing over there. And it was a program created for nurses, because nurses had patients who were self-medicating with cannabis, and they had no idea how to help that. Like, what do I do? It's not taught in nursing school. It's not taught in medical school. Cannabis was, it's the stepchild that you don't talk about, which is really frustrating and sad, because you should talk about all of your children. Okay. And so cannabis, as we know, is it's a plant, it's a weed, hence the word weed, and it grows in abundance. It actually helps clean the soil. So wherever you are, if you're planting, if you're planting in soils that are contaminated with whatever toxins that might be in the air or that have been in the earth beforehand, planting cannabis, it will absorb those toxins. And so if you are a consumer, it's important to get your cannabis from growers who are using organic soil without these toxins, because the cannabis will hold on to it, and then you're going to be inhaling that. That's no bueno. We know this. So because it's a plant, it's grows in nature, just like chamomile or lavender, rosemary. These are plants. These are dandelion are considered weeds. Weeds are weeds. It's a plant. It grows from nature, and it's meant to be consumed. And so during this pandemic, I turned to cannabis, and thankfully, because it was getting me through. One, getting me through sitting in a house all day. Two, getting through being a teacher online while my son is in the next room that I can see and hear him, and see him clearly not on his screen where he's supposed to be. And being able to focus on being a teacher at home, and then being able to be a parent all day, every day. Like, I'm already doing that, but sometimes I get a break. When he went to school, I got a break. But there was no break. And so having cannabis in my life was a goddess send, and I'm using lots of female divinity and female connotations because it's the female plant that we consume, that we ingest, that offers all the benefits that I will continue to talk about as I go down this list of amazing healing properties. So, but cannabis, we actually have an endocannabinoid system, which is why our bodies meld so well with the plant, the phytocannabinoid part of the plant. So, because it was meant to be. So, our bodies actually have receptors to hold on to the cells that come from the cannabis plant. Just like our bodies have, our endorphin system connects to the poppy plant, which is why it was used for pain originally, before it was, bastardized by human content. So we have this system that is meant to absorb and use cannabis, and helps to regulate our entire system. And it turns on, guess when? The first time you breastfeed. That's when your endocannabinoid system, boop, the light switch turns on. And so there could be, I don't know all the reasons, but maybe it's one because it's igniting your system, your regulatory system, your homeostasis. That is what cannabis does. And so it's understandable that once you nurse and you get in the colostrum and they get in the breast milk and all of these healing healing liquids, that your body starts to turn on and is able to be ready for the world. It makes sense. So we have an endocannabinoid system that holds and brings in, connects to the cannabis plant, because there are over 100 cannabinoids, but CBD and THC are just 2 out of over 100. So there's so many more that we don't know about. But both of these, both THC and CBD, help to support our systems. THC is more for the receptors in the brain. So that's where epilepsy, Parkinson's, the diseases with tremors and memory, Alzheimer's as well. That's where THC would be ideal. Is for brain issues that affect the brain. And then CBD connects to the CB2 receptors in our bodies. And that is where, that's where there's pain, there's, people who have arthritis and so many other ailments tend to focus on CBD. And of course, a combination of both just helps with everything from top and bottom, right? So it's ideal to do your own research. And again, you choose for yourself where, what you want to use. It helps to find a consultant like myself to help you, figure out what ailments you have, what is going on for you, what remedies you're looking for, how are you hoping to heal, what's the ultimate result you want, how you want to consume, whether you want to be, whether you want to inhale, whether you want to just have some sublingual, whether you just want it topical, maybe you just have pain that's like right underneath the epidermis, like maybe right there. So whatever, it's important to find someone. There are medical practitioners who, I'm not sure if our doctor who is on the call is one of those who talks to folks about cannabis. There are several, especially California, and not just people who are giving you the prescription, not those like, oh yes, sure, you can have cannabis. No, there are people who also, that is, they focus on that and they can really help guide you. But ultimately, like Samsara was saying, and all the folks who are presenting today, it's your body. You know best. You would know best what is going to work for you. When you're breastfeeding, it is all the research, that there is, because there's so little of it, because it's been prohibited. The consumption has been prohibited since the 90s. I mean, for 90 years, so not over 9 decades. So if you are looking to find out like what doctors are saying, most doctors, just like with any substance, are telling you not to consume before the age of 21. So I know people who've been smoking since they were 12. I know people who smoked from their teenage years up till now, and people with PhDs and MDs, and like, it's so, because the research has been so limited, or the research that they're opening up to us is so limited, it's not possible to get all of the to know all of the information and find out exactly what happens when a mama or a birth giver who's nursing, what happens to that baby, because there aren't long-term studies, and those there are long-term is the most long-term is that they'll study one person every year for maybe 20 years. But these are people that they studied from the womb. So there's very few that they're saying, okay, let's get you right at breastfeeding and go. That hasn't happened. And if it has, it hasn't been released. And keep in mind, I'm going to backtrack just for a moment and hope to find myself again, that there were agencies that were created, or researchers that were given money, hundreds of thousands of dollars, to research marijuana, because they wanted to find a problem with it. They wanted to prove why it was wrong, why it was bad, why it should be banned, why it should be illegal, why it makes you crazy and psychotic, which is what they talked about in some of those movies in the 50s and 40s. And they spent all this money and have found the opposite. They found all these benefits. And so that's what the money's been going to. There have been studies for decades. People are like, oh, well, no, people don't know about weed. No, they know. They just want to share that information with you, because it's damning for them. So this war on drugs that's been happening since the 1800s is redonkulous. And it goes back to brown people bringing it into the country, and but that's neither here nor there. Oh, that's here. But so back to breastfeeding and cannabis. So the consensus is not recommended. And as with anecdotal stories, because of lack of research, people are still doing it. There are countries where Rastafarian countries that cannabis is a part of their lives from day one. And people have societies all around the world that are functioning with very little issue, with little to no issue. And I feel like with anything that you're giving your family, giving your child, whether it's nursing or not, it comes around to all the other factors that are in their environments that are also contributing to what's happening. So, if somebody who's eating from the earth and eating all plant foods, would they have the same response? Would their children have the same response as someone who's eating a sad standard American diet, and drinking Starbucks every day, or some kind of caffeine, inhaling these toxins in the air, and eating processed food? Like, there's already got to be a differentiation. So I think of it that way. And so, yeah, so just keeping in mind that it's a decision that you're going to make for yourself, and just know that, it does, cannabis is known to help aid with with your appetite, digestive system, your metabolism, chronic pain, inflammation, mood, and these just to name a few. You can go on Healthline and find a list, an exorbitant list of all the things that cannabis can help you with. And remember, you don't have to get high. That's not what cannabis is all about. Some people want to get high, and that's their recreational. It also helps to alleviate, like, the high feels good to people who with PTSD. Get the fuck out of your brain for a minute, right? Like, no, don't think about the stress for an hour. How fucking lovely would that be? Like, what? Stress-free for? Yes, let's do that. And so CBD, is also psychoactive. People are concerned, a little confused about what psychoactive means. If it is affecting some part of your body, and it's like giving you a different practice, like going at a different level. Let's say you're here and it gives you a lift in some way, it's psychoactive. Then you can take a lot more CBD and feel a little loopy. It's not euphoric. It's not the one that's going to get you high where you're where you don't know where you are, or you're maybe sitting in like having an indica in the couch and you're feeling exhausted. It doesn't give you that, but it does change your brain function. And so that's where the idea of not giving it to your baby, because it does cross the blood-brain barrier, for us and our babies nursing or growing within. And so just like with alcohol, you're not encouraged to consume, and people do it anyway, because it helps them to relax or what have you. So choosing what's right for you is ideal. And it's, some people are using it because their babies have been diagnosed with some rare disease, and they medicate and nurse. And one woman's anecdote was her baby no longer had cancer, and the baby was pronounced this fucking miracle because the doctors couldn't do anything about it, because they don't, again, cannabis, they can't recommend that to babies, because it's still illegal and what have you. So, but they could recommend, other drugs that are more harmful. And so these people are finding these miracles happening, but it's moms knowing that plant medicine is going to be beneficial for me and my baby. And so you decide, it's up to you. I know I had more, I kind of went off on a tangent, but that's it in a nutshell. I mean, I have I'm gonna just switch the screen so you can see. So it's gonna give some resources. So some books, there's a woman that I interviewed. I have a Canna Chat series every Monday at 7 p.m. And I interviewed the Canna Nurse Heal. Her name is Erica. I interviewed Weed Mom, Danielle Simone Brand. Weed Mom is the name of her book. So you can grab that. It is available online. Some social media and podcasts, Canna Nurse Heal. She's a cannabis nurse, pot smoking moms, because it's a real thing. The Canna Mom Show. And then I just had in here M for MM. That's actually minorities for medical marijuana. I want to put that in there. Leafly and Jointly are two apps. Jointly is really great because it's offering you an option to say what your symptoms are, what you're looking to feel, and ameliorate, like how you're looking, what result you're looking to have, how you want to consume, and then it'll give you products based on your environment where you are. So it'll send you to these stores so you can get stuff. Local dispensaries are also great to find information. But remember, again, you know your body best. There will be people there who can support you and answering your questions about different strains, and because they all have, and Leafly will do that as well. So if you don't want to talk to a person, you just want to kind of research it and get some information, Leafly is the app for you to just figure out it'll let you know what the terpenes are, and I'll get into that another day when we have more time for cannabis. And then this is my info here. And so my business is 420 Mama Yogi. And here's my website. I also offer cannabis infused yoga with therapeutic touch up in Jersey, in Teaneck, New Jersey. And then my Canna Chat series every Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you, Lily.
That's it, Pastor Wall.
Thank you. So with all things, everything we've talked about today, you want to work with the appropriate professional who can guide you through and making choices that are best for your family. It's good to know that, there are such choices available to people. I certainly support medical use of cannabis, and I wish there was more study so that people could feel more secure. But I think that's starting to happen now. And again, we want to use organic soil, organic plants, organic everything. And you don't have to smoke it. There are other ways to consume cannabis, and there's the CBD oil, which I have found to be very miraculous in my life, on and off, and probably be back on it again. Talking to you as soon as I'm free about that. So thank you so much for your time. And I'm sorry, we were just, everybody was so amazing. And so, I want to, and we're already at 6:09. So one more presentation before we all go. Thank you folks for hanging in there. Kiss my godson. He's so big and handsome nowadays, it's crazy. Okay, I'm going to share a screen because our next presenter is a powerful, amazing woman from Australia. In order to make the time work, I had to interview her the day before yesterday because, trying to figure out us, the other side of the world time and our time. And we talked about a bunch of beautiful things, and I just want to close with our conversation after her, then I'll say a few words and we'll be done. Thank you so much for hanging in. So welcome everybody. This is a special added film component of our beautiful Oakland Breastfeeding Festival. We're actually recording it ahead of time because my beautiful guest is in Australia. And we magically hooked it up so that we can have this conversation and present it to you for our event that's going to be happening Sunday of this week. So exciting. Zoom is such a fun toy. And I would like to introduce Mahal Musa, who is a wonderful birth worker, dancer, trainer, mama. And I'd like her to introduce herself, and then we will move into our conversation.
Oh, thank you so much, Samsara. We have finally met. I'm so happy. And I was saying to Samsara, I was actually in America in 2013 and 2015 speaking at a couple of birth conferences, and I really loved it. So I am Mahal Musa, and I am the founder of Embody Birth and Belly Dance Birth since 1997. So I'm in my 25th year now as the founder of this beautiful, sacred childbirth education program. And I'm of Palestinian, Lebanese, a bit of Egyptian and Indian background, but I grew up in Australia. I came to Australia when I was 2. I was kidnapped from my mum as a 6-month-old by my dad and brought to Australia without my mum. I was at boarding school at 4 years of age and didn't have a mother for 7 years, the first 7 years of my life. So that really set the scene for me to see the work that I do in keeping mothers and babies together. And, it's often when we reflect back on our life that we realize why we do what we do. And now I really do know that on an embodied level that I do this work because of my childhood history and how important it is the way we are birthed and the way we are looked after in those first years of life. So it really does have an impact and an imprint on who we become. And I've had 3 beautiful children, all born as nature intended. My sons are 21 and 24, and I have a beautiful daughter who is 12, Amina, and she was born at home when I was 46 years of age. And I breastfed her for 8.5 years. Wow. So, yeah. So here we are talking about breastfeeding. And I wanted to share my personal experience with everybody because I was in the worldwide media, and this was from 2012 to 2016, really before anybody was standing up for, advocating for breastfeeding, and especially natural term breastfeeding, meaning when the child decides to wean. And whether that be 6 months, 6 years, 8 years, 9 years, that is a decision that is made between a mother and her baby, her child, and our circumstances and our beliefs and our personal understandings and, our informed education and all of those things. And because I'd been a birth worker for many years when my daughter was born, I learned about natural term breastfeeding. And because I had my daughter at a late age, and it was a conscious conception, conscious pregnancy, conscious birth, I wanted to do the conscious breastfeeding and just see who would this child become when everything was flowing from a physiological mammalian template or blueprint. How would my child be in the world with these experiences? So she sounds like she was a scientific experiment. But I just wanted to be able to flow from A to Z without any interference and just, give her that freedom to be whatever she was meant to be. And she had no intervention whatsoever through birth and post-birth, etc. So, and she's an amazing,
I'm so excited for your daughter. As you're speaking, I find myself feeling emotional because that's something that's so lost in this world, that we are so far from our humanity.
That's it.
And it's reflected in the strife between people and the issues that we have, issues with children's brain development and on and on and on, children's emotions as they grow to adulthood and not being able to manage the big emotions of being a human being. And I really do believe, even in science even supports how breastfeeding supports all of that. Strong immune system, strong brains, good digestion, all those things that we know our digestive system is our immune system.
Let's see it.
Right? So the child born without that support, so many little ones, there's a time and a place for everything, but too many children are just being given the formula right away and not even having a moment of it's not a fad or a fashion statement. It is something that is a gift to little humans to help them grow up to be healthy and strong. So I'm so happy for your daughter.
Yeah. Thank you for doing that. Well, that's what I was saying in the media was, human milk for a human baby. How can that be controversial? That is as nature intends, where we can. And I think sometimes the default position is often what's not possible or where we can't do something. And that becomes the default rather than what is biologically imperative for mother and child being the default. So where we are lacking, I think, on a societal global level is that we don't value the experience of the mother and baby or the person giving birth and baby. We're not valuing that voice that is sovereign and autonomous in that journey and that experience, because we have a default of actually sickness or not being well or not being healthy. So that's right. So my work and my teachings and my lived experience is always about what is possible, what is the most healthy thing that I can do that Mother Nature has given to me. So how do I stay in my sovereignty and in my inner voice knowing? How do I connect to that and listen to her? And I think that if we can support wherever possible physiological birth for those who want to walk that path is just as valid as any other pathway for birthing and then feeding our children. But we don't support and value the physiological pathway because there's no money in that. Let's just get
exactly right. Exactly.
There's
no product connected with it.
Yes.
That can be sold. Yes, that's exactly You were mentioning that you were in the media. What was that about?
So basically it started actually, there was a lady, a beautiful lady, Jamie, on the Time magazine. You may remember that. She was feeding her child who was standing on a stool.
Yes.
And he was 3.5. And funnily enough, Amina was 3.5 at the same time. And I had written online on an Australian news site, wow, fantastic. My daughter's 3.5. I'm actually 48. And, you know, I'm breastfeeding, or I was 49 at the time, and I'm breastfeeding her. Good on this mum. This is normal. This is natural. This is another pathway that should be available to all women. And that was in 2012. And then the phone rang, the emails came. Everybody started asking me for my story. So I just sort of, went down this river of sharing my breastfeeding experience with my daughter, Amina. And so for 4 years, I was on CNN, I was on Discovery Channel documentary, I was on Australian Women's Day, lots of TV shows in Australia and overseas. Our story went viral twice. But what I saw was the media is always looking for that sensational headline, that way of cutting your voice as a woman, that way of diminishing who you are to the world. And using your story in a way that's not truthful. So I stood my ground because I'm very strong, because I work in birthing. I stood very strong in my knowing, and to say to them, no, that's not, for example, how I feed her. Go and stand under that tree, you know, in a silly position and feed her so we can get some photos of you. And I'd say, that's not how I feed my daughter. She just comes and sits next to me while I'm talking to you, and I just feed her. And it's a very natural, very calm, very non-sensational experience of connection and attachment. Just like I might go and make her a sandwich, or you may pour a glass of milk from a bottle. Let's calm it all down. Let's slow down. Let's not get activated in our nervous system. Let's just see this for what it is. I am a mother attending to my child's needs. I listen to her cues and I follow that. And I was telling everybody, follow what works for you. Anything that works from the heart, that flow of heart and love and bonding, do that. Not this ridiculousness that they are trying to fit us into an agenda and a narrative that is not ours, that is not the maternal voice. So that is what I had to do. I had to stand very, very strong. And I learned a lot, Samsara, about the media and how complicit they are with governments to create an idea about the subject of breastfeeding that would be opposed or against anything that they were trying to put out into the world in relation to bottle feeding formula. And I said, it's not us and them. I said, those wars that you are trying to create, division between mothers, doesn't exist in our lives on our day-to-day living. Right. If I'm sitting with a mother who's bottle feeding her baby, I'm not ostracizing her. We're just sitting in the circle of womanhood and feeding our babies in a gentle and calm way. It's you that creates this instability and fear. And the same thing goes for birth.
You're so right. At the end of the day, that calm and people just deciding what needs to be for their families. Some families will breastfeed. Some people will. There's occasions when formula is the thing that the family needs to do. Some people milk share, getting milk from milk banks, sharing with other lactating parents, and that's just people feeding their children. Why is there so much drama and shame around something that should just be so basic and so pure and so good?
That's it. And we have to, as mothers, and this is the strong voice that I have in the world, whether it's in birthing or breastfeeding, is we have to claim and own that voice and the way that we choose to do these things without getting that external fear that takes us and distracts us from that inner knowledge and knowing, that alien blueprint. We have to not take on that shame that is not ours. And we work a lot of that in my Embodied Birth program for birth. We talk a lot about imposed fear and innate fear. What is the difference? Because you can have some innate fear. That's what breastfeeding. How am I going to feed my baby? Will I have enough milk? You know, how will my body open for birth? These are innate fears or questions or, you know, curious openings and gateways into excavation, and they are perfectly normal. But when we have externalized fears that are suffocating our own innate fears that take precedence over this excavation, we can get stuck in their limitation. So we need to, when we walk this path, really take that deep dive into what is this journey? What is my intention on this journey? Yeah, become
Okay, now my friend is stuck. So let's see if she gets unstuck.
no.
Okay, so we lost you for a few minutes. We lost the last couple of minutes of what you were saying. So if you could say it again.
Yeah, sure. So I was saying, we as mothers, we carry the jewels of consciousness in our bodies through these experiences, and we need to value ourselves. We need to value our voice. We need to value these gifts of consciousness and give them to the world confidently and strongly, without justification, without having to defend ourselves. Who do you have to defend yourself to? This is a relationship between you, your baby, your partner if you have one, your family, your community. That's what matters, to build strong community, to build strong families. So nobody can penetrate from the external fear into my self-referenced voice of truth. That's what I fight for. That's what I fight for.
I absolutely support that. And I really, you know, if I had a magic wand, you know, I would, for folks who are choosing to breastfeed their children, to give them that confidence, as I do as a doula when someone's giving birth, the confidence that you can do this is not, you know, this unfathomable thing that requires you to read 20 books and maybe one book, you know, but it shouldn't. If we were living more authentically as humans, we would have all seen this beautiful thing in our lives, and we would have seen babies nourished at the breast or body of their parents, and it wouldn't be such a neat and feat. It's complicated for two reasons: because we don't see breastfeeding, and two, our births are so medicated. As a poor little baby that, you know, seeing 3 nipples and trying to figure out which one it should attach to.
Crazy.
And then being blamed for having a bad latch, you know? So everything's a diagnosis and treatment.
Yes, because we see the body as an illness, as a pathology. And that's what I was saying before about the default being what's not possible. And that not possible is where the interference grows, because if we don't trust and we don't believe as birth professionals, then we're going to have that position that I have to interfere somehow and I'm going to save the mother. And we say in embodied birth, a mother doesn't need to be saved, she needs to be loved. If we understand the way in which milk flows, the way the body opens, that is through the portal of love. We know that, the portal of oxytocin. Yeah, respect, listening, patience, slowing down, everything that we do, the opposite of these things. So we are coming back to the basics, the fundamentals of understanding the body and the female body, the womb, wisdom, the body of the womb. Now, what does that require in order for these things to flow as nature intends? Are we supporting that? And how do we support that? And we have to also take a look at ourselves as birth keepers. And we do a lot of that in embodied birth. How do I navigate myself in the world? How do I navigate the feminine or the female aspect of my womb wisdom in the world? How do I integrate the masculine aspects in the world? And I see that as I am anchored, but I flow around that anchor like the milk, as I said, flows, like the oxytocin flows. Yes. It is all one beautiful journey when we are loved and supported. Yeah. That's what I hope. You know, I'm 60 next year. I've been at this for 25 years. If we can come to that loving, foundational place where all voices are valid and valuable and important on these rites of passages, this is what we need more than ever.
Absolutely. Wow, I'm so grateful for everything that you've shared. And I feel like we should close up now and move on with process this video. They'll be part of the Greater Festival on Sunday, and I will send you a copy. We're going to tape that too because it will be on Zoom, and I'll send you the whole thing so you can see how you fit into the beautiful whole of the event. Thank you for making this time to speak to me from Australia, a place that I really would love to visit one day when things are hopefully more, when things get a little less crazy about traveling. I'll be very happy to come and see. How would you like to close? What would you like to leave us with?
Well, I was going to say before, Sarah, when you said about reading the book, and we say in Embodied Birth, and this is a beautiful way to close, is that the living book is within. Read her, read it. Yeah? This is the first port of call, that book that is already living inside yourself, and you are writing the new chapters to that book. Exactly. And we pass that to our children. That is the legacy. And so they move forward from that. So the living book is within, read her.
That is a beautiful way to close. Well, I thank you so much, my friend. I'm so happy to have gotten to finally see you kind of sort of in person.
Beautiful.
And with blessings on your family and your work. And we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
See you on Facebook.
Yeah, see you on Facebook. Instagram, I'm under Maha also too. You can get in touch with me. Anything, anytime. I'm happy to talk to people.
Do you have a website, my dear? Say your website.
Yes, it's mahaalmusa.com. mahaalmusa.com. And I've got lots of resources. I do counseling. I'm doing an online embodied birth training, lots of things. So please get in touch. Yeah.
All right, my dear. See you well.
Namaste. Namaste. Bye.
Any questions, feelings, or comments, lovely people? Thank you for hanging in there, whoever's there. Okie doke. So this was wonderful. I am so happy. I am so pleased and proud of all the wonderful presenters. I just know the best people. I love my people that I know. And oh my gosh, the wisdom, the beauty, the knowledge. Oh my God, it's too much. I'm just overwhelmed with joy right now. But we do need to end. So Laura, do you want to have any closing words?
No, I concur. This is one of the best in the books. I just keeps getting. I was engaged. It is so great. Really, truly. Happy Black Breastfeeding Week. Happy Oakland Breastfeeding Week, y'all. Really excellent. Thank you so much, all the presenters. Just amazing content.
Amazing.
I continue to learn so much. Thank you.
Oh my goodness. I'm overwhelmed with joy about it all. So thanks to everybody who came. Thanks to our beautiful lactating parents who lactated because we're here for you. We're here for you. All the beautiful experts that you saw are here for you. So please reach out to them if you need their help, support, and care. They are the best. We are blessed in the Bay Area. All these beautiful brown people, just gotta say, all those shades of brown. So we don't have to look far to find that loving hand that cares about us in that particular way. That's very important. Very, very important. So I want to say thank you. Happy lactation to all, and to all a good night. And I'll see you next year. Happy blessed Black Breastfeeding Weeks.
Thank you, everyone.
Adios.
Thank you so much, Samsara. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura.
Looking forward to it. Talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. 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 Love you, Aquila. Bye-bye, Jamie.